Good evening. I'm calling to order this meeting of the Council of the Town of Oakville. Please rise if you're able and join us in O Canada. Thank you, everyone. Please be seated. The town of Oakville is located on treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. We thank the Mississaugas for being stewards of this traditional territory. By 1820, the Mississaugas began welcoming settlers from all over the British Empire. Soon, Oakville was welcoming Black people fleeing the United States. Our indigenous white and Black residents created a community of harmony that makes us proud. By 1857, Ontario recognized Oakville as a town. At Town Hall today, we fly the flag of the Mississaugas with the flags of Oakville, Ontario, and Canada to acknowledge our origins. The vibrant livability we are dedicated to creating for all attracts people from across Canada and the world. We feel sorrow for acts of racism and intolerance suffered across the world, including Canada and here at home. We want our future to be equitable and inclusive for all. We believe the path of truth and reconciliation can unite us. Please keep well, stay safe, and let us on council know of any chance to be helpful to you and yours. And please let us know anytime you can help increase Oakville's harmony, prosperity, and livability. Mr. Clerk, do we have any regrets this evening?
There are no regrets, Mayor.
And Councilor, do we have any declarations of pecuniary interest? Mr. Clerk, I see none. Council, do you have changes for the minutes, or is there a mover and seconder to adopt the minutes of the previous council meeting? Councilor Longo and Councilor Nanda, thank you for your motion. Is there any objection? Mr. Clerk, there's no objection. The minutes are adopted. We also have the minutes of the workshop meeting on June 22nd. Can I have a mover and seconder to receive those? Councilor Shea, thank you, and Councilor Lischina, thank you. Any objection? There being none, those are approved. We have the advisory committee minutes from the Accessibility Advisory Committee, and if you have any changes or questions, now's the time. Otherwise, a motion. Councilor Giddings and Councilor Adams, thank you. Any objection? There being none, those are adopted. Council, in the consent items, are there any items that you want to separate? Councilor McNeice?
Thank you, Worship. I believe 9.4 has some delegations.
All right, we will separate 9.4. And Councilor McNeice, you have circulated an alternate motion for that, and I'm advising council to look to their inboxes so that you can catch up. Councilor Haslett-Deal.
Thank you, Mayor Burton. I'd like to separate 9.1 as well.
All right. Can I have a motion to adopt the others and 11.2 at the same time, unless somebody wants to discuss that when we get to it? I thought that was probably could have been a consent item. So I saw
you have questions on
Councilor Shea and Councilor Grant. Thank you. Any objection? The balance of the consent items and the 11.2 are adopted. And Councilor Haslett-Deal, 9.1, you have the floor.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Burton. My question is for CAO or Commissioner. In the report for the DCH, you talk about that no additional funding is required to continue on some of the work that's being done on the downtown cultural hub. I just want to bring surety to the public that the funds that are needed to do that work are not additional funds that you're requesting, nor funds that would be in the 2027 forecast.
Through you, Mayor Burton, I can confirm those funds are previously approved funds that are part of an approval in 2023, and that there will be no additional funds required in the 27 budget to complete the work that's planned.
And just as a follow-up to that, so once that work that you identified in the report is done, it would come to the next council for further consideration. Is that correct?
Through you, Mayor Burton, that is correct. So any additional works that you see in the appendix, none of those are currently funded, and they are subject to budget approval from council.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Councillor, would you like to give us the indicated motion of receipt?
Sure.
Can I get a second for that? Councillor Giddings, thank you. Any objection? There being none, that is received. And that brings us to 9.4. Mr. Clerk, we have 5 registered delegations. Would you like to call the registered delegations, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Harry Shea.
Mr. Shea, welcome. Council looks forward to your information.
Good evening, Mayor Burton and members of council. Less than a month ago, I delegated regarding the same 9.4 agenda item for council to receive the June staff report for information only and to defer the amendment. I closed my comments that evening by the following, quote, "Our retailers and restaurants deserve to know that the town is not creating conditions that will drive their customers away. That protection is worth preserving," end quote. The June 30th staff report recognizes that BIAs are unique places. They are the destinations where people come to shop, dine, attend events, and support local businesses. BIAs, by their very nature, experience high turnover, unfamiliar visitors, and more opportunities for honest mistakes. Those realities, especially in Bronte, justify additional safeguards before someone's vehicle is removed. I'm here in support of Appendix B, the proposed amendment that would require vehicle tows within the Oakville business improvement areas to be carried out by town mobile compliance officers rather than being authorized solely by private municipal law enforcement officers. This amendment strikes a much better balance between protecting private property rights and protecting residents and visitors from unnecessary or improper towing. Appendix B introduces those safeguards. Next slide, please. Under the proposed process, a municipal law enforcement officer would still be able to issue a parking penalty notice. However, before any tow occurs, the officer must wait 30 minutes, submit photographs, a tow request, and the town mobile compliance officer must independently review that request, confirm the tow is justified, and arrange the secure tow through the Halton Region Police. Those are meaningful checks and balances. By contrast, Appendix A would eliminate the current requirement for prior approval and replace it with a simple notification to the director before the tow is authorized. Oversight would occur primarily through audits and complaints after the fact. For someone whose vehicle has already been towed, an audit days or weeks later provides little practical protection. Once a vehicle has been removed, the owner has already suffered the inconvenience, disruption, and financial costs associated with retrieving the vehicle. Preventing an improper tow is far better than discovering one after it has happened. For these reasons, option 1 meets the true intention of the original bylaw 2024-187. I referenced this bylaw in my June delegation. I also appreciate that staff has identified the operational impacts associated with Appendix B. There will undoubtedly be additional demands on public compliance officers. However, public confidence in the enforcement should remain the primary consideration. When residents and visitors know that an independent tow officer and not a private enforcement company must verify that a tow is justified, confidence in the fairness and integrity of the process increases. Next slide, please. And finally, strong enforcement and procedural fairness are not competing goals. They are complementary. Property owners retain the ability to address unauthorized parking, while motorists receive reasonable protections before the significant step of towing their vehicle. The BVRA encourages council to adopt Appendix B, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Shea. Other questions for the gentleman? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Clerk?
AJ Cho.
Mr. Cho, welcome. Please share your information with council.
Testing. It working? Okay, perfect. Hello, councilors. I'm AJ Cho. We run up on Sun Valley Square. I believe you all are familiar with the place. Since the bylaw that has been passed, it has shown that it is effective in the area. This does give time for offenders to come back and retrieve their car. Typically, when the car is being removed, it's like an average around an hour afterwards it will be removed. So this gives more time for the offender to actually come back. You can actually also argue with the fact that the plaza that we manage up there, it's typically small, and there's awfully more tenants and less parking. When the car is there, they're typically there for more than 3 to 4 hours. So given that time, most of the customers that do come, they'll just leave. They won't spend their time waiting around. We do ask the councilors to reject the bylaw and to find better alternative for accessible parking for other consumers. And that's pretty much it. Thank you for your time and listening.
Thank you for yours. Mr. Clerk?
Jonathan Marin Batista.
Mr. Maroon Batista, welcome. Council looks forward to your information.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, members of council. My name is Jonathan Maroon Batista of Airden Burles LLP, and I'm here on behalf of Davpart, the owner of the commercial properties municipally known as 2400 to 2420 Lakeshore Road West and 2411 to 2427 Marine Drive in Bronte Village. These properties are home to more than 40 commercial tenants. But before I begin, your worship and members of council, I just want to point out that we have provided council written correspondence in advance of this delegation, so I trust that you have received those. That sets out our client's concern more fulsomely. Our request is a straightforward one. We respectfully ask that council defer consideration of the proposed amendment to the town's towing without the vehicle owner's consent bylaw to permit more consultation with affected property owners and stakeholders. I'm referring to Appendix B. I want to make clear that our client supports the town's efforts to address predatory towing, and our client also supports the town's and Bronte BIA's objective of strengthening Bronte Village for the benefit of residents, visitors, and local businesses. Our client's concern is not with those objectives. Rather, it is with the proposed amendment that would affect how private property owners manage parking on their lands. Only 2 weeks ago, staff presented council with a report concluding that the current framework was working effectively. Staff found that municipal law enforcement officers had demonstrated, and I quote, a high degree of reliability, and staff recommended eliminating the requirement that municipal law enforcement officers obtain mobile compliance officer approval before authorizing or causing a tow. Instead, staff proposed a simple notification requirement. The amendment before council today, proposed in bylaw 2026-110, Appendix B, would take a materially different approach for business improvement areas. Rather than reducing oversight It would remove the authority of municipal law enforcement officers to authorize tows altogether. For our client, this is a practical concern. The provision of parking forms part of the commercial obligations our client has to its tenants, more than 40 commercial tenants. Those tenants depend on parking being available for customers, employees, and other lawful users of their parking facilities. By making it more difficult to remove unauthorized vehicles, the proposed amendments would interfere with our clients' private property rights and their ability to meet those commercial obligations. If additional public parking is required in Bronte Village, we respectfully submit that that is a matter for the town to study and address, but respectfully, not by restricting the ability of private property owners to control and manage and enforce the use of their own parking facilities. Given the significance of these proposed amendments, the short time between their public release around Canada Day and today's meeting, we respectfully submit that the deferral is both reasonable and appropriate. Should Council decide not to grant the request for deferral and proceed with the amendments in Appendix B today, our client will be forced to consider the implications of that decision and all of the available remedies available to it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for the information. Questions for the gentleman? Thank you, sir. Mr. Clerk.
Cheryl Etherington.
Welcome, Ms. Etherington. Please present your information to council.
Good evening, Mayor Burton and members of council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. It's nice to see you all again. My name is Cheryl Etherington, and I'm here on behalf of the Bronte BIA as our board chair in support of the proposed amendments to the towing without the vehicle's owner consent bylaw outlined in Appendix B. The Bronte BIA represents 175 businesses and commercial property owners. Our role is to support the long-term success of Bronte Village as one of Oakville's premier waterfront destinations. We advocate for our members, promote local businesses, attract visitors, and help create a community where people want to shop, dine, gather, and return. That perspective is why we support the amendments before you today. This discussion is not about any individual property or past incident. It is about establishing a policy framework that recognizes business improvement areas are fundamentally different than other commercial areas. Visitors understand that Bronte includes both public and private parking, each with its own rules. But they don't experience each property in isolation. They experience Bronte Village as one destination. When someone leaves after a positive experience, all our businesses benefit. When a visit ends on a negative note, the reputation of our entire district is affected. That's why parking is more than an operational issue. It is part of the overall visitor experience and an important contributor to our local economy. The way parking is managed across the district shapes how people perceive Bronte as a whole. We fully recognize that private property owners have the right to manage and protect their parking facilities. Unauthorized parking creates legitimate challenges, and those challenges deserve effective enforcement. At the same time, BIAs are unique environments. They attract high volumes of visitors, seasonal tourism, community events, and people who may be unfamiliar with the area. That environment calls for an approach that balances the rights of property owners with the realities of managing a destination. As a BIA, we work every single day to help create a positive visitor experience while respecting the rights of private property owners. We educate visitors about parking options through our website, our annual visitors guide, which reaches more than 23,000 people each year, as well as through social media, printed parking maps that are distributed by local businesses, event signage, and communications. At our farmers market and other community events, staff and volunteers also regularly assist visitors in finding appropriate parking before issues arise. Our objective is to promote compliance through education, reduce conflicts wherever possible, and support businesses, property owners, and visitors. The proposed amendment reflects that same philosophy by requiring an independent town mobile compliance officer to verify that a tow is justified before a vehicle is removed. Appendix B introduces a more important safeguard while preserving the ability of property owners to address unauthorized parking. It continues to respect private property rights while introducing a clearer and more consistent framework for towing within BIAs. It recognizes that enforcement in a destination district should be structured, transparent, and proportionate to the unique environment in which it operates. From our perspective, this is a thoughtful and balanced approach. It protects private property rights while supporting a positive visitor experience, strengthening confidence in our commercial district, and recognizing the unique role BIAs play in Oakville's economic development. We also support the inclusion of a formal review of this framework following an initial implementation period, such as 6 months to a year. This would allow staff and council to assess how the amendments are functioning in practice and make any necessary adjustments if required, ensuring that the objectives of fairness, consistency, and positive visitor experience continue to be met. Creating a successful destination is a shared responsibility. The town has a role, property owners have a role, and the BIA has a role. When those efforts are aligned, businesses thrive, visitors leave with a positive impression, and our entire community benefits. On behalf of the Bronte BIA, I respectfully ask Council to support Bylaw 2026-110 and the proposed amendments establishing a BIA-specific towing framework. These amendments recognize that BIAs are unique commercial environments. They provide a framework that respects private property rights while reflecting the realities of a destination where businesses, visitors, and the broader community intersect. Thank you for your time, and I would be pleased to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Etherington, for your presentation. Questions? Thank you, Ms. Etherington. Mr. Clerk?
Mario Forgione.
Mr. Forgione is joining us online. Welcome,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Forgione. We look forward to your information.
Thank you so much. And prior to the meeting, I sent out some printed material. I think everybody has a copy of it. Should have more than one copy. I've sent it out twice. But nice to see everyone, Mayor. I want to start off by saying, first and foremost, I enjoy being here to have this opportunity to talk about something here that I think is very dear to me. I've been part of the Oakville community business and property investment for over 45 years. I go back a long way, and I hear a lot of the information, very eloquent information being presented here. And quite frankly, I don't disagree with the fundamentals of what is being proposed. What I really find disturbing is that I am the only property owner, private property owner that has property in all 3 BIA jurisdictions. And unfortunately, not one of the BIAs has notified us of the issues that is now being presented in front of the council and the mayor, which I find very disturbing. We talk about alignment. We talk about stakeholders being consulted. Quite frankly, I think it was very disturbing when I was one of the last people to find out that this was indeed presented and put forward. The BIA in Bronte does a great job, but unfortunately, the communication isn't one of their best points. Councillor McNeese and O'Meara, are both part of the BIA, or I think O'Mara is. I'm not so sure about McNeese. So I think there should have been some sort of communication, and there wasn't. When you look at the framework here, that I guess, let me back up a little bit. Why are we even having this conversation of unlawful parking on private property? The reason why you're having it is because there isn't adequate amount of parking in Bronte, period. This is a byproduct of the lack of parking in what I think is one of the biggest growing areas in Oakville, downtown Bronte. And we don't have any parking. And so what makes it even worse is that the chronic, and I'll just go back up, the chronic abusers of private parking lots, in my particular situation, are the property owners and the business owners that don't have parking available to them. And they don't have very many choices. And we're on Nielsen, Lakeshore and Nielsen. Right across the street from us are live workplaces that business owners are there that don't have parking, and their customers don't have parking. So it's convenient for them to come on over and park in our parking lot. I'm not sure that private property owners should be the de facto parking lots for the town of Oakville, but that's indeed what's coming, or what's happened. There's a lot of reference to tourism. I can assure you that most tourists don't come to park in my parking lot to go down to the Bronte lakefront. I think it's a stretch to say that people park, or that tourists are impacted because of our policy. And our policy has been education. In the last year, on our lots, zero complaints and zero tows have happened. We have been partners with the town in educating people that come to the lots and say, listen, this is private property. You can park here for 10, 15 minutes, but you should look elsewhere, okay, for long-term parking, if that's indeed what you want to do. And when we talk about the BIA and 175 businesses, there are two people that are affected here on this bylaw that represent over 40 of those businesses. 30% of the 175 are represented by two complainants here. Okay, and you're discounting the fact that we were even engaged in the conversation. And how's that even possible? I mean, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, we have a wonderful town, and we've got some wonderful people, but all of a sudden you've forgotten to call somebody up and say, hey, listen, by the way, this is what's going on. What do you think? What I think is that even though this is framed as an additional layer of transparency, your bylaw, in actual fact, is an opportunity or a barrier to the unlawful removal of cars within a private property. That's what it is. And I'm going to explain it to you, because there's a few looks. I see everybody on my screen, which is wonderful to see. What is that? What does he mean? Here's what I mean. Right now, in the town of Oakville, an MLEO comes and tickets a car. After that, he calls the town of Oakville. He calls the town of Oakville for approval. And the town of Oakville will issue an approval through the MCO. And then that MLEO phones a tow truck and has that car removed, which is very, very rare. What you're asking to do in your bylaw is have the MLEO, okay, write a ticket, call in an MCO who has to physically come down, okay, to inspect a property that's already been pre-inspected by the town of Oakville and is qualified to tag and tow, have a look to make sure that everything is done properly, and then, and only then, at the discretion of the MCO, will he call Halton Police Services to have that car towed. In actual practice, from the beginning of writing that ticket to towing that car, can be in excess of 2 hours. In excess of 2 hours. And on top of all of that, here's what makes no sense at all. After that incident happens, or that particular MLEO MCO interaction, the MCO leaves the lot. Half an hour later, the MLEO writes another ticket. Guess what? That MCO has to come back and reassess the site to make sure that it's in compliance. Like, that's absolutely absurd and a total waste of resources. And not only that, at the end of the day, I have restaurants, I have chiropractors, in the restaurant, he has 60 seats. Okay, on a night when he has a full house, that's 30 cars in the parking lot. and I can't move any of them out for 2.5, 3 hours? All I'm asking, there is a solution to the problem, okay? But making private property a de facto parking lot, okay, for the town of Oakville doesn't make any sense. You know what makes sense? Building a parking lot or building a parking structure so that we don't have this problem. I'm not sure, you know, what you can say more than that. I mean, it's not like it's a he, she, we, this. It's us. And believe me, at the end of the day, I feel for the people that don't have parking spots. I feel for people that can't find a parking a place. I feel for people that get their cars towed. But guess what? I didn't create the problem. I didn't create the problem. Like, we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in tax dollars. Okay, we pay our taxes. And at the end of the day, what we expect is the same level of respect and service as anyone else. And we didn't get any respect, okay, through this process. Zero. Mayor Burton, that's all I have to say.
Mario, thank you very much. You said it well. Good to see you after all these years.
Nice to see you. You look great, by the way.
And you. We're gonna have to take the rest offline. People will get impatient. Thank you very much, Mario.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, council, that ends the delegates. And Councillor McNeice, I think I'll give you the floor.
Thank you, Worship. Councillor Longo and I moved the alternate resolution that's found on page 6 of the staff report. If you'd like, I can read it.
You have the floor.
Okay.
I think it would be a great idea.
I will read it through. So, moved by Councillor McNeice, seconded by Councillor Longo, that option 1 included in the report from Municipal Enforcement Services titled Towing Without the Vehicle Owner's Consent Bylaw, 1-year review supplemental dated June 30th, 2026 be adopted. 2, that Councillor direct Municipal Enforcement Services to prepare a bylaw to amend towing bylaw 2024-187 to provide for the 30-minute period between the issuance of the parking penalty notice and submission of a request for approval to tow a vehicle. Number 3, that Municipal Enforcement Services staff bring the amending bylaw forward for consideration at the August 10th, 2026 council meeting without requirement of a separate report. Number 4, and this is where it gets confusing, that recommendation 2 included in the report from Municipal Enforcement Services titled Towing Without the Vehicle Owner's Consent Bylaw, 1-year review supplemental dated June 30th, 2026 be renumbered accordingly. And number 5, which is number 2 from the original, that bylaw 2026-110, a bylaw to amend towing without a vehicle owner's consent bylaw 2024-187, as amended, attached as Appendix B to this report from Municipal Enforcement Services, dated June 30th, 2026, be passed. And I'm
Councillor?
happy to make some comments as well.
Well,
So,
you still have the floor.
excellent.
And I only quarrel with you. I didn't think it was confusing.
okay, thank you. It was confusing for me, but glad everyone else has it straight. So the first 3 in my mind is how the initial bylaw in 2024 was intended to be. What's been happening is the first minute after the parking infraction, MLEOs are seeking a tow authorization when the 30 minutes has not elapsed. That is not the understanding I had, and I think that is not the understanding that council had, that staff would start spending time authorizing a tow before the 30 minutes has elapsed. And based on the statistics we were given, 25% of the time, the tow that was approved never happened. The vehicle had left. It was not needed. So 25% of the staff time that has been spent on this was essentially wasted. So this is how we free up some staff time and still keep some of those checks and balances in place. We still have the authorization across town where the MLEO has to call in, get authorization from the MCO, but it cannot happen until the 31st minute. There is no infraction until the 31st minute. So number 1, 2, and 3 clarifies that. That was, I believe, the intention of council. Maybe there was some confusion with staff on it, but I believe that is the original intent of the bylaw. Now, regarding the original number 2, which is now number 5, I think it was well spoken to by the delegates. It's not intended to be punitive in any way to property owners. This comes directly from the City of Ottawa. This is how they manage their parking. We have to keep in mind that MLEOs are not a licensed business class in Oakville. They will be come the new year, and their name in itself is quite confusing. They do not work for the town. They're private parking enforcement officers. They will be renamed that come January. We'll have more checks and balances and audits and things like that we can do for them come next year, and we'll have a report back in a year's time with many additional ideas on how we can keep balancing private property owners' rights with consumer protections and transparency. So I think that number 5 recognizes that there's certain areas across town that maybe have more sensitive users, tourists to the area. We've had certainly many complaints of people making innocent mistakes and having severe consequences. So I believe that the BIA areas are appropriate for measures like this, and also in the BIA areas already have different parking requirements. They have different rules for events, patios, noise. So it is quite common to have a different set of rules in our BIA areas. So for those reasons, I hope that this resolution passes.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Longo, as a seconder, do you have remarks?
Yes, just quickly, thank you, Your Worship. I want to thank Councillor McNeese for his leadership on this. I think it balances private owners' rights as well as, being fair to those who, inadvertently park in places they shouldn't, as well as, making sure that people actually do respect the property rights of those owners. And I want to thank staff for bringing this back quickly so that we can actually get this going. So I hope everyone supports it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Duddick?
Thank you. Through your worship, I wonder if I could ask a question of staff on this issue. Was there any notification that took place, as indicated by the one delegate saying he did not get notification?
Councillor, yes, notification. Initially, there was no notification for the June 22nd report because that was a for information report only. But in advance of this report, yes, there was notification provided to all 3 BIAs as well as interested parties that are property owners and property management.
Okay, and can you confirm the one gentleman who spoke about the property, I believe it's situated up by the hospital, that would not impact him, would it? Because he's not in a BIA?
Through you, Mayor Burton, Councillor, the BIA provision would not impact that property owner or property management. However, the second provision that was moved to be adopted would affect that property. The requirement for an MLEO to wait the 30 minutes from the issuance of a penalty notice to put in the request for approval for tow from an MCO.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor O'Meara?
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Yeah, and just hopefully it's good news for Mario, so he understands that there's a lot of parking coming to all of our BIAs, hopefully in the future, and downtown core and in Brawny as well. So we are in tune to that, and we look forward to your help when it comes to championing those projects moving forward as well. Just to support the motion that's on the floor here as well. We haven't seen the impact of what tickets are right now and how that does it, and to go right away and say, well, it's got to be a tow and a ticket, which now is over $300. I think hasn't worked for 10 years. We haven't been able to tow our way out of visitors understanding, I can go to a restaurant, but if I go across the street and go to the bank machine and then come back and my car's gone, that I don't think that's the intent of what we're trying to do here. So I think we need to see what we can do in terms of ticketing and what sort of cultural change that makes. And we look forward to working with our partners again. Some of the delegates who have spoke, we have been at this for over 10 years. So this is not new. They understand. Some have towed before and stopped towing, and some are going back to towing and that sort of thing. So this comes as no surprise to any property owners, I don't think, in Oakville about this issue. So we look forward to working with everybody when this comes back, and hopefully we can, with the addition of parking spots across the town, we can try and accommodate and make sure everybody gets to understand where it is okay to park and where it is not. And if they make a mistake, then there's a penalty, but it's not one that sees seniors out in the middle of the night having to take Ubers to spend hundreds of dollars to try and understand where those lines were crossed. So thank you very much for that.
Councillor Hazard-Thiel.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Burton. So in consideration of the amendment and the report tonight, we had a discussion with the one MLEO that is in downtown Oakville. So only one took up the opportunity to be an MLEO. And in that discussion, what pleased him about the last year, and really only the last while, was the fact that there was an opportunity to issue the $65 ticket, and their reaction was that was enough to deter. And they do not see repeat people taking their spots, and so they were supportive of that. This change puts towing in the hands of the town versus them having to go through the machinations to figure out the tow. And in fact, he never ended up actually towing. In the process, people moved their cars within typically that being ticketed in 30 minutes. So our brief experience, so it's only been in this last while, has been that deterrence does come from a ticket. And a reminder that this is private property. And so I'm prepared to support this as through some of the discussions that we've had, and to look back over at it again in the future of whether or not it is that fair, balanced approach. I'll point out that we received correspondence from a resident telling us that they had no intention of shopping downtown, even though they got towed in Bronte. And when we clarified for them that, well, actually, didn't occur in downtown, their reaction was very much that the town has created a culture that it's okay for them to create this environment, and she saw it very much as a negative against all the BIAs. I think we've calmed her down. I think she's now going to shop and stay with us. But I mean, it does speak to BIAs are special places in our town. Visitors do not always have the same awareness that locals do, and we don't want them to become turned away. We do want them to become part of our community. They are part of the economic engine we all benefit from. So I will be supporting the motion.
Councillor Chisholm.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to support the motion also. Sitting on the Kerr Street Village BIA, we have challenges with parking also, but it's a challenge that all the BIAs, and I know they're site-specific, but we understand the rationale and logic to that as a council. However, I guess my question is directed to staff, and Mario was articulated with respect to a parking, looking at a parking garage, whatever the case may be. But my concern or issue is when after the 30 minutes, it seems there's a long time and a process. Is there any way we could consider a quicker turnaround and avoiding some of the steps that we have in place right now to make it still effective?
Through you, Mayor Burton. Councillor, I apologize. I'm not sure that I understand the question. Could you
well, as some of the owners are saying it takes a couple hours before they get the response back for a tow. Let's face it, a couple hours, usually they're gone by that time. So I'm just trying to understand, is there a process that we can put in place that would speed the process up to be effective?
Through you, Mayor Burton, we could look at the possibility to institute certain processes. Obviously, a process that is broadly applied throughout every property for which this bylaw is going to apply may be difficult because now you've got competing interests. We've also got other high priority calls to deal with throughout the town. But certainly if there are specific parameters around a particular property, we can create an enforcement process to address those particular parameters.
Well, I can understand your answer to that. However, it is a challenge for the business owners and so forth, and I know it's a very big challenge in Bronte. Moving forward with the BIAs, they are specific sites, and we do have a lot of people coming in from outside of Oakville. And the reality of it is, when they come to Oakville, they don't distinguish Bronte, downtown, and Kerr Street. It's all Oakville. And I understand why we're looking at these BIAs. So I like the review coming over 1 year, and I'm going to support this motion that's been put forth by Councillor McNeice and Councillor Longo. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chisholm. All right, I'll put the vote. Is there any objection to the proposal by Councillors McNeice and Longo? Mr. Clerk, there's no objection. The matter carries. Council, we'll now turn to 11.1, the 2026 Corporate Asset Management Plan update. And we have a report and a presentation. I'm going to direct your attention to Catherine Hewitson, the Director of Asset Management, and hopefully it will clarify things for people.
Thank you. Hey, good evening, everyone. Mayor and Council, I am pleased to present the 2026 Corporate Asset Management Plan update for you this evening. Thank you. Okay. So the 2026 Corporate Asset Management Plan, or CAMP as we call it, is the town's roadmap for how our $4.9 billion in infrastructure is managed, providing a guide to decision-making regarding asset lifecycle activities that minimize risk and maximize service delivery in a financial sustainability manner. It's about knowing what infrastructure you own so you can plan to do the right thing to the right asset at the right time, so that our assets will continue to work well with no surprises and provide our citizens with quality, reliable, and functional services. The regulation requires a lot of information to be contained in an asset management plan, with the requirements increasingly phased in over a number of years. In summary, it explains what assets the town owns, what conditions they are in today, and what level of service residents can expect from them. It describes the activities that the town plans to do over each asset's life, from routine maintenance and repairs, rehabilitation and replacements, as well as plans for new infrastructure and improvements as the town grows. In accordance with the latest requirements, this update of the Corporate Asset Management Plan summarizes the town's approach to ensure assets performance is maintained to meet service objectives, the funds required, and the long-term financial outlook. Think of the Corporate Asset Management Plan as a summary of all town-wide infrastructure plans, giving a combined view of future infrastructure renewal and state of good repairs, maintenance and operational costs, as well as new or improved infrastructure as the town grows and service demands change. Over the past several years, staff have continued to build on our asset management practices, developing evidence-based decision frameworks. In previous years, I've been here describing a number of these different assessment frameworks and tools, such as a criticality assessment tool that weights multiple factors, such as replacement time and effort, impacts on legislative requirements, and the degree of service impact. We also built a risk assessment matrix that aligns the age or condition of an asset as the likelihood of failure, and that criticality score as the impact on failure, to determine in any given year which assets are at the highest risk and should be prioritized for rehab or replacement first, and which are in medium risk zone and need to be closely monitored. While the council report and presentation provide a high-level outlook, the larger corporate asset management plan on the website contains 9 chapters, including the asset management overview, a detailed financial section, and individual chapters for each asset category, providing more details. It's a little slow. The town's $4.9 billion in assets or infrastructure systems are the backbone of our community. They support a range of municipal service that enable the quality of life experienced by the residents, businesses, and visitors. Our town assets support a range of recreational activities and hobbies in our numerous community centers, sports arenas, and libraries. 9 fire stations are located across the community to ensure that we can respond to emergencies effectively. Residents enjoy a range of outdoor activities in our 250 community and neighborhood parks. Transit service runs effectively through the use of our 135 buses and specialized vehicles owned and operated by the town. And lastly, people, goods, and services can get around town in an effective manner on our 4,000 kilometers of roads and active transportation facilities. This reliance on town infrastructure stresses the importance of maintaining assets in a good quality condition and is the cornerstone of maintaining strong resident satisfaction. In the most recent community satisfaction survey, residents expressed overall strong results, with 90% of residents overall 90% satisfaction overall with town services, suggesting that the town's asset base is generally meeting community expectations and delivering value. 81% of residents believe they receive good value for their tax dollar, indicating a high perceived return on municipal investments. So based on the 2025 data, overall, the town has a healthy asset portfolio with over 90% of assets in fair or better condition and 62% in early to midlife stages of life. This outcome has been supported by years of proactive planning, renewal, and long-term commitment to capital investment and operational maintenance activities. An example of this proactive planning is a number of years ago, staff presented a road resurfacing forecast using a software tool that predicted the future condition of roads at the existing funding level. A commitment was made at that time to increase the annual investment to $9 million per year and set a service level standard to maintain the road network in good condition, targeting an average pavement quality index of 70 or better. Another example is a long-standing capital levy and 1% increase, which has allowed the town to continue to fund renewal and replacement of assets when they're needed and not deferring them to future years, which extends them beyond their useful life and increases the risk of failure and service impact. The regulation requires that a municipality needs to provide levels of service using both qualitative descriptions and technical metrics. When you think of service levels and customer value, you tend to think about the day-to-day services, such as hours of operation of a library, or how often we cut the grass. It's trickier to think of an asset providing customer value, as it's not as tangible. I like to think of buying a new car when I think of an asset customer value and the types of things that you might consider. So you would do research into different car manufacturers and makes to determine if it's a good quality vehicle. You might look into Carfax for recent maintenance records or accidents, or look up reviews to make sure you are buying a reliable vehicle. You consider certain functional needs such as trunk space, or mileage, or legroom. And down the road, as your family grows, you may need to invest in a second or maybe even a third car to meet everyone's schedules. At the end of the day, you're searching for a vehicle that is the best value for your money, hoping to minimize your risk of buying a lemon. The asset management service level profile created has been developed to translate the corporate vision to be a vibrant and livable community for all into service statements for each asset category and a common set of asset management objectives connected to 3 key customer service values: quality, reliable, and functional. The quality customer value ensures assets remain in good quality state to support effective delivery of service and minimize disruptions through the ongoing capital infrastructure renewal activities. Quality is typically measured by maintaining an asset portfolio at an overall condition rating. Reliable focuses on ensuring day-to-day continuity through operational preventative maintenance, repairs, and inspections to ensure assets operate as intended and minimize safety risk. Reliability activities are often measured by minimizing the number of breakdowns in a given period, depending on the type of asset. Functional addresses the community evolving capacity needs, service standards, and environmental goals to provide continued functionality as the town grows. Functional service measures vary based on the type of infrastructure and are often established through master plans, such as a modal split target as part of the Transportation Master Plan, or 1 community center per 45,000 population. One standard measure that is often used as part of the development charges study is monitoring the quantity of each type of asset per capita to illustrate how the municipality is maintaining capacity as the population grows. As a town example, you could think of our emergency services for a minute. In order to meet the response time service delivery targets, the assets that support the department need to be considered. Fire response vehicles and equipment need to remain in good quality condition so they work properly and not at risk of failing when they arrive to an emergency. The fire facility and vehicles need to be in reliable, good working order so that the alarm rings, the truck turns on, and the garage door opens. As the town grows, the fire master plan determines where new facilities need to be positioned to service the community and respond effectively. Overall, the level of service framework developed provides a structured approach to balancing community service expectations with long-term asset planning, risk, and cost. The purpose of the corporate asset management plan is to identify the asset management objectives and infrastructure investment required to meet the service objectives of the town. I know there were a lot of numbers in the report and the executive summary, so I will attempt to clarify a little bit here for you. So based on the analysis completed, the annual investment of $426 million per year is required over the next 10 years in order to sustain all 3 service values and across all 7 asset categories. So when we break this down, the $426 million can be broken down into those 3 service values. The town requires $205 million per year on average over the next 10 years to support reliable maintenance, repairs, and inspection activities. This forecast was prepared by using the 2026 to 2029 operating budget and adding inflationary increases and operating impacts from capital to service growth for the remaining 7 years. This investment supports maintaining minimum maintenance standards for our roads and sidewalks. It keeps HVACs, pool systems, and arena ice pads operational and maintains our fleet to warranty standards. The $139 million per year has been identified to support functional related needs, ensuring assets have sufficient capacity and suitability to meet the evolving needs of the community. This forecast is based on projects identified through initiatives related to the Growth Capital Program, master plans, service delivery plans, and the Climate Action Plan, as identified in the 2026 capital forecast. These type of initiatives include stormwater flood mitigation projects, road widenings, facility renovations, as well as new parks, trails, and streetscape improvements. Lastly, $83 million per year is needed to renew and replace infrastructure and maintain assets in a quality condition or state of good repair over the 10-year period. A new predictive modeling software was implemented to develop this forecast, similar to the one used for road resurfacing a few years ago. It takes the asset age and current condition and forecasts the life cycle renewals and condition outcomes based on similar criteria used to develop the 2026 infrastructure renewal forecast. So that was all based on the 10-year plan. So we also noted in the report that using the predictive modeling software, we were able to forecast a little bit further out, over 25 years, for infrastructure renewal needs. This longer-term outlook is important because it captures renewal needs for our longer-lived assets, such as our stormwater pipes and bridges. And it also captures future replacements of our short-lived assets, such as vehicles. Based on the analysis completed, that 25-year forecast showed that an average annual investment for those quality renewal needs is expected to increase by $11.7 million. Also noted in the report, to assess the appropriate investment needs for quality level renewal activities, 2 scenarios were developed: an unlimited funding scenario and an optimal scenario that considers asset criticality while maintaining asset condition to minimize risk. When the 2 scenarios were compared, the optimal renewal scenario achieved a strong balance between affordability, risk, and asset performance, and it was found to reduce capital expenditure needs by $2.5 million per year, and still achieved a minimum of 85% of assets in fair or better condition for each asset category. It was the optimal scenario used to present the numbers that I quoted for you today in the 10-year and the 25-year program. Now, while the asset management plan proposed is to forecast the infrastructure needs required and assess affordability, the actual project timing and delivery and funding is refined through the annual capital and operating budget process and brought forward to council for approval each year. So understanding the affordability of the camp's total investment needs is a key component of the asset management regulation. There are many financial indicators that can be used to assess affordability. One key indicator is to compare the incoming revenue to outgoing expenditures to assess financial sustainability. This is similar to how you, in your own household, would look at your monthly paycheck and the amount of money coming in versus the amount of expenditures you have on a monthly basis, such as your mortgage, your insurance, your utilities, etc., to ensure that monthly spending does not exceed your monthly income. For a municipality, this means comparing annual capital revenues, such as the capital levy and reserve contributions, against the capital forecast expenditures. The finance team completed financial analysis based on the 2026 budget and forecast. This analysis shows that the annual revenue contributions of $411 million fall short of the annual capital expenditures of $426 million, resulting in an imbalance or a gap of approximately $15 million per year. As previously noted, the 25-year expenditure needs are expected to increase. This would further increase this gap by $5.9 million, adding additional pressure on the capital reserves. I did want to take a note that we did do a quick survey of other municipalities neighboring to us and looking at their asset management plans. And I'm happy to report that our $15 million gap per year is relatively on the lower end compared to the other municipalities. Some identified the need to increase funding by $35 million per year, and another recently quoted $118 million annual funding gap. So understanding the current health of town reserves and the capacity to fund future capital investment needs is another key factor in understanding the affordability of the asset management plan. Similar to having a household savings account where you might save up for a home renovation or a roof repair emergency, the town reserves are used to fund annual capital needs as well as unexpected emergencies. Reserves are also used to smooth out the impact of large fluctuating capital investment needs. The town has a long history of managing reserves and reserve funds at sustainable levels over the years, which has contributed to the region's top credit rating. While the town has many reserves and program-specific reserve funds to pay for capital needs, the capital reserve is a primary funding source for non-growth capital. This chart above shows the town's projected favorable reserve balance in the blue line for the capital reserve based on the funds identified in the 2026 budget and forecast. The strength of this reserve reflects a series of proactive financial strategies implemented in recent years, including the introduction of a stormwater fee to fully support stormwater infrastructure needs, the strategic use of debt for major projects like the Central Library, and securing external grants, all of which help to alleviate the pressure on the capital reserve. Based on this information, the town expects to have sufficient funding to fully support the capital expenditures identified over the 10-year horizon. However, the level of spending anticipated is not sustainable over the longer term. As illustrated in this chart, the reserve balance declines over the 10-year period. This is a result of the annual spending outpacing annual revenue contributions. So the town will need to be proactive in addressing this persistent gap, but having this information now allows us to begin planning and developing strategies sooner than later. To support the long-term financial sustainability of the corporate asset management plan and identified infrastructure needs, it's important the town continue to implement the financing strategies that have successfully strengthened its financial position in recent years. This includes a multi-pronged approach, leveraging various financial tools and strategies, such as continue the annual capital levy increase, continue to monitor contributions to asset-specific reserves, and increase transfers as new assets are built as per our budget practice, assessing program-specific reserves such as parking and stormwater that are funded by user fees to ensure they are in line with forecasted spending requirements, continue to leverage available debt capacity for major projects where available, and pursuing grant funding opportunities from senior levels of government. Expenditure forecasts and service level demand assumptions will also continue to be evaluated. We need to consider reviewing and, where appropriate, adjust the levels of service targets across the various asset categories and prioritize our investments based on the type of service they support. We'll also continue to evaluate conditions, asset useful life, and overall performance measures to develop evidence-based investment decisions. As part of the 2026 budget last year, I presented 2 examples of this. One, we analyzed the actual useful life of park amenities compared to our assumptions and found that on average, those assets were lasting 5 years longer, resulting in about $2.8 million being pushed out of the 10-year program. We also developed a fleet replacement criteria model that wasn't just based on age and condition, but looks at the kilometers and maintenance costs to help to specify our fleet replacement needs. So in summary, the town's infrastructure supports a wide range of services to residents, businesses, and visitors. This infrastructure serves as a critical foundation in achieving the town's vision to be a vibrant and livable community for all. Overall, the town's $4.9 billion asset portfolio is very healthy, which has been supported by proactive planning, renewal, and capital investment. The 2026 Corporate Asset Management Plan is organized around 3 service objectives: quality, reliable, and functional, that guide renewal, maintenance, and future growth infrastructure investments. And based on the analysis, the town has sufficient funding to support infrastructure needs over the 10-year planning horizon. However, the longer-term outlook is a little less sustainable, but with proactive planning and strategic investments, bridging this gap is feasible. Overall, the 2026 Asset Management Plan supports the compliance of Ontario Regulation 588 and indicates that the town is in a strong asset management position with a mature planning approach, a defined methodology for balancing service, cost, and risk. So I have mentioned this before, but asset management has been a priority for a number of years now, and the town has been investing in developing and improving our asset management practices and processes across all departments. It is an ongoing process that takes time and effort to fully develop, and even then, there is need to continue to evaluate our practices and our plans. Every year, we continue to update our condition information on our assets and use it to update our capital plans. We also provide a state of infrastructure report every 2 years and use it to monitor asset performance against the metrics in our asset management plan. Asset management is a town-wide responsibility, and together we plan to maintain our assets over the whole lifespan, manage risk, and invest in our resources so our town assets continue to support the valuable services and programs that the residents rely on. So I want to thank you for your time. I also have with me today Sean Bose, which is our Manager of Asset Management, and we have Matt Day from the Finance Department, which we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hewitson. I think the first and most important question is answered by the first point on your last slide. I take it that we are in full compliance with the provincial requirements for asset management.
Through you, Mayor, yes, we are.
And just review that it was a multi-year process that the province put cities through, first to identify the assets, and secondly, to track down their cost, and then calculate their renewal, and then come up with the financing plan. All of which I'm pretty sure we can be proud of the way we led the way on that.
Through you, Mayor, yes, we can. We've been working towards improving our asset management practices since 2009 when the PSAB legislation came into effect.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hewitson. We have a number of questioners lined up for you, and we're going to lead off with Council veteran Alan Elgar.
Thank you. Through Mayor Burton, thank you very much for the presentation and all the details you put into it. I must say, it takes a lot to put this together and pack it up like this. You say that over 90% of the town's assets are in fair or better condition. Do we know if you broke it down between good, fair, and poor, instead of just fair and or better? Like, do we have those numbers at all?
Through you, Mayor Burton, we do have those numbers. I believe we did include them in our executive summary of the asset management plan, which was in the appendix. So if you just give me a minute. Oh, sorry, that's in the overview, isn't it, Sean? I think we have, so page 8 of the executive summary gives a breakdown of each of the asset categories and shows the percentage in good, fair, and poor.
So overall, where the 90% would be, fair and better, what was the percentage for good?
The percentage for good overall?
Yeah,
I don't have that number off the top of my head,
okay.
but I
You-
can
well,
get
you
that
can
for
get it.
you. Sorry, I know we
Okay.
have it in one of these.
I just couldn't find it, that's all. I appreciate that. Now, when you talk about the 1.6 billion of non-core assets, now, is that based on actual assessment of the condition of those assets that you've got here when I see that?
1.6 billion non-core assets is the value of our non-core assets.
Correct. But
Based
what I
on
asked
our
question is, what is the actual, is an actual assessment done of those also? Of whether they're good, fair, or poor?
through you, Mayor Burton, yes, we do use condition information on an annual basis to update the condition data of all of our assets. They're done through different practices. Some, like a biannual condition audit for bridges is done. Some are done annually where they look at the infrastructure coming due in the next 3-year window, such as in facilities and parks, and the operational teams actually go out and inspect those assets. And where we don't have the condition information, we would use age as a proxy for condition.
Okay, perfect. On the next slide, you talk about the 426 million over the next 10 years. Now, is that in current dollars or is that escalated for anticipated inflation and other factors when you put in the 426 million?
Through you, Mayor Burton, similar to our budgeting practices, it is all in current dollars.
Current, so there's no inflation or anything in there. Okay. It's current dollars. Okay. So when you talk about, you go through reliable, quality, and functional. So reliable and functional are 10 years. Quality is 25 years. Is there any way we can project out to show the full 25 years?
Through you, Mayor Burton, currently our practice for operating is really only a 3-year budget, so we did incorporate some minimal inflationary increases, as well as looking at the 10-year capital impacts for those growth projects to forecast out a 10-year. But unfortunately, our capital plan doesn't go beyond 10 years to be able to show us what those 24-year needs would be. Also, in terms of the functional category, those are based primarily on our master plans, which again, typically only forecast out 10 years.
Which of course, functional are DCs, which we don't know where that's going anyway in 10 years, the way it's going right now with the province, I suppose.
We are currently updating the development charges background study, so more information can be provided in terms of a longer term, I think for some of the asset categories, but maybe not all of them.
Yeah, yeah. No, I understand I understand it's not under our control anyway with the province. Now, when you look at the 10-year forecast, and when I look at, you go through that, your page 7 actually on the presentation, and you see it dipping down. Now, is it, I guess 80, what did I hear, 85% in fair or better condition or something? Everything we have is either 85% or better, so only 15% of the capital assets are in trouble. And going forward, that's the way we're going to play it, basically.
So through you, Mayor, our forecast is targeting a service level to maintain our assets at the 85% in fair or better condition. But our current actual condition is the 90% of assets in good or fair condition today.
So, which is perfect with what you're saying. That's where I find it interesting. The service level, everything could be at 15% be in trouble. What would that 15% could not include? I get worried when I hear that. An asset, say something is bad, we wouldn't allow like certain things get to a 15% level where they're in trouble. Now, how do you split that out?
Through you, Mayor Burton, so that maintaining that minimum of 15% in poor is on average over the 10-year period. So any given year could be higher or would not hopefully go below lower. And we look at each asset individually. So we're projecting each of the individual subcategories and trying to look at those and maintaining them at 85% or better. So it's not that it's the whole collective asset category and we're letting a certain type of asset go drop into poor. It's for each individual line of business, we will only let 15% go into poor. If that makes
Okay.
sense. So
Yeah,
for
yeah,
parks at only given time will only have up to 15% in poor. And for roads, only up to 15%.
Now, when you get into strategies for closing the funding gap, when you talk about continue, steady, incremental capital levy increases, does that mean tax increases? Probably.
Through you, Mayor Burton, the capital levy is part of the tax budget and increases 1% or a little bit more right now per year. So we would need to continue that practice.
And we don't have a projection out 10 years for that though, do we? That was used in this?
Through you, Mayor Burton, no, we didn't project what the tax impacts would be over the 10-year period.
I appreciate that. And as far as the federal and provincial funding, we don't, there's not a lot confirmed. I guess we're anticipating where that'll be. And I appreciate what you're doing there. No, it was a great presentation. And I tell you, it's like working with the Ouija board though, with what you have to do and try to present to us. And I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Okay,
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Giddings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Elder covered a couple of mine already in terms of inflation and provincial changes to development charges and other things. The last one I have is any consideration in terms of severe weather events, you know, what we've been going through lately and all the forecasts that it's going to get worse and worse. I know it's tough to figure out what a bridge is going to cost or collapsed this or ruined that. Any consideration for that?
Through you, Mayor Burton. So in terms of extreme weather events, as you're aware, we did do the 30-year forecast for the stormwater infrastructure, which is a big piece of increasing the resilience against those storm events. And as you know, we adopted a stormwater fee that will increase that level of funding to support that. We are currently doing some assessments of climate change impacts on the actual infrastructure itself and what may need to be put in place to improve resiliency, but that is sort of a next phase of our asset management journey.
And I appreciate that. Emergencies are just that. They're unexpected events. Thank you very much.
Councillor Chisholm.
Thank you, Worship. Great presentation. And as Councillor Algar indicated, it's like a Ouija board. Things are moving. I guess the biggest concern, what we're having presently, I understand it completely, on the 10-year. And in years gone by, we had a little bit of security and moving forward. Now with the economy the way it is and our political environment, and the cost of things are going up dramatically in a lot of our sectors. And we were talking about inflation, and I know we have to build that in. Would it make sense to come back on a yearly basis, and you might do it, and I don't even know that, coming back on a yearly basis and doing the adjustments on these capitals? Because what I'm hearing when we have capital projects coming online, what the RFP goes out, and all of a sudden we say it's $10 million, and all of a sudden now all the bids are coming in at $15, $16, $17 million. There's a real risk here, and that's what really concerns me. So it's almost we have to be on top of this on a monthly, not a yearly basis, a monthly basis to give us some, I guess, feedback from staff and some of these projects that are coming through. I'll give you an example, Kerr Street, or excuse me, Spears Road. Some of the things that are coming through, we're finding we're looking at maybe 30% increase from the original. And I know it's extremely difficult with this. It's a moving target, and I congratulate you and the staff of putting this together, but the environment now really puts a lot of pressure on your 10-year capital. So I'm hoping that we can look at on almost 6 months or not even a yearly basis to keep us apprised of if we have major impacts. I know emergencies and so forth are one thing, but just the putting it out to a tender and finding the cost of these things that are just gone off the rails. Could you comment on that?
For sure. Through you, Mayor Burton. That is something that we do pay really close attention to and is part of our annual capital budget development that we're going through right now, is looking at our projects, not only the ones that we have forecasted, but maybe the ones also in works in progress, and comparing them to recent tender prices and the more recent information that we get, and updating those costs. So if we need to adjust those budgets, that gets done on an annual basis. Now, in regards to the asset management plan and sort of the broader look that we provided you today, that is a requirement to kind of continue to update those long-term plans on a 4-year period, I believe. So we would be coming back to you with updated asset management plans on a 4-year basis.
Thank you.
Councillor Hazatiel.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Burton. Thank you for your time this morning as well. I'll try to keep my questions clear. Sure. So I'm just going to build off a little bit of what Councillor Chisholm was mentioning. So can you just help us understand that as we look at new projects, in that process, how does asset management or finance clarify the financial impacts related to the functional quality and the reliability costs that need to be built in to the assessment of whether that project is viable?
Through you, Mayor Burton, through our capital budget process, we don't color them quality, reliable, and functional, but we've tied those service values more or less to those different kind of streams of budgeting. So we would look at those projects and how they're meeting the needs. For example, the functional category meets our growth needs. So through the master plans, you would assess the value or the need of those projects. And then through the infrastructure renewal, we're looking at, maintaining our assets in that fair, good quality, so we can assess that on an annual basis, looking at what percentage of our assets fall into those categories and what investment needs need to happen to maintain our assets in that good quality.
So I'm going to just ask it a slightly different way. So it's a singular project.
Okay.
It could cost us $25 million is what the report says. The overall cost is $25 million. Is in the reports that we receive a calculation done on the asset being maintained and a revitalization cost to it? Or is that secondary to it? In other words, eyes wide open, you tell us it's $25 million. Is that considering what we might have to pay additionally, or is it included in the $25 million?
So I believe you're trying to get at, so there's an initial capital cost of a project, but then there's an ongoing maintenance and operating cost.
Exactly.
Okay. So yes, through you, Mayor Burton, in our capital budget, every capital detail sheet will outline not only the capital cost, but that ongoing operational need if it's a new asset that we're acquiring or has a service impact. So those are identified in each and every one of those project detail sheets.
Okay, so thank you for that. Can you break down for us, or can Matt break down for us, the $426 million, like the revenue sources that we're spending? $411 million is what you said. I think we're going to need $426 million. That's where the gap is. But if you just use the 411 from last year, I believe, where are all the revenues for it?
Through you, Mayor Burton, thanks for the question, Councillor Hasenthiel. The $426 million, it does come from a variety of funding sources. As you can see when Director Hewitson went over all the categories, some of them are like reliable as highly in the operating budget. So 45% or 190 million actually comes from the operating budget through our taxes and our fees. And additionally, 21% actually comes from development charges. That's what's supporting mainly that functional category. An additional 15% comes from the capital levy and capital reserves. Another 15% is from our asset-specific reserves, like our equipment reserves, our building maintenance reserve, along with our new stormwater reserve fund, where we have the stormwater fee collecting for those needs. And those key things cover about 96% of that cost. And in addition, we do have some provincial and federal funding and some debt financing to kind of round that out.
So thank you for that. So when we look at that chart that shows we're headed in a steep decline, there's a line on there that talks about our capital reserve target is, I think it's around 30 million. So is part of the objective not just to make sure we're at the 30 million, but that we're not pulling from the capital reserve budget, but rather we're shoring up these other areas that we get the revenue from?
Through you, Mayor Burton, we are hoping to, yes, shore up every area. For every reserve I mentioned, really, we do have a minimum target. So each equipment reserve, we have a similar line where we always want to keep at least that amount. So in combination, we have these minimum target levels for all of these funding sources that we're hoping to stay above to help protect us and close any funding gaps. So we're constantly monitoring that through the budget process and increasing those transfers where we need to. So the 30 million for the capital reserve is what we see as the minimum amount we would want there based on how much on average we're spending from that reserve.
So thank you for that. So while you're up, can you tell us if there was a sensitivity analysis done on the DCs for the projections that were provided to us in the executive summary? So I mean, you can't open the paper every second day. Somebody wants to either take it away, make us give it away, depends on who. So was there a sensitivity analysis done, or are you going to tell me I need to wait until you have the DC study done?
Through you, Mayor Burton, that was going to be my initial answer. You're going to need to wait. But I will say, through the 2026 budget, we did show our development charges forecast. We were pretty conservative, taking into account all the revenue losses we've been experiencing, and we are still maintaining a positive DC reserve fund based on all the projects in that 10-year forecast. So on a positive note, like it does appear we'll be able to fund those. One thing we do have here and did reflect is that we do, as you know, fund DC exemptions annually. And that comes from our capital reserve. So it is part of the reason our capital reserve is lower because we are funding those exemptions. So we've tried to incorporate everything we know. Of course, legislation or things can change quickly, but based on what we know today, we've taken into account all those variables.
That was a great new tidbit that you added there about the exemptions. Thanks, Matt. I have two last questions. There was a conversation about stormwater, and I just want to confirm that the stormwater fee only funds stormwater and not the capital reserve, because the public has some potentially misconceptions about the fee. And so can you just, for clarity, for those who might have stayed up to watch this or hit record?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Burton, yes. Everything from the stormwater fee that's collected goes specifically towards stormwater needs. It doesn't go to any other type of costs or projects.
Okay. And my last question is on poor condition. What you're suggesting tonight is that we're endorsing the methodology that would allow potentially 15% in an asset category to be in the poor category. Can you confirm for us that does not include anything that would be a safety risk?
Through you, Mayor Burton, most definitely we are looking at the criticality of the assets and maintaining everything that is a high criticality at a higher level. In any given year, poor condition really just means an asset is at an end of life and need for replacement. So that means in, say, 2025, it was fell into that poor category, and we would put it in the plans for 2026 to replace. So even if the assets are in poor condition, they're only in a poor condition for a short period of time until we renew them.
Thank you very much.
And Councillor, I can assure you that the motion is to receive the information, so you won't be endorsing anything. Councillor O'Meara.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, and just asking, I know AMO and FCM do a lot of advocacy work on this to try and get predictable funding and asset management funding. So can we make sure that for AMO this year, we've got this information and these numbers folded into our advocacy packages?
Through you, Mayor Burton, happy to do that for you.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, I was getting a necessary update. The notes I work from didn't say what the report says, so my bad. And thank you, Councillor Hazardeel. I'll get a new note taker from now on. No, certainly not you. All right. I'll look for a mover and seconder to endorse and receive the report. Councillor O'Meara and Councillor Adams, thank you. Any objection? There being none, that's carried. That brings us to 11.3, the on-street parking bylaw and residential parking permit program review. And we have a staff presentation from Stephen Rosati and Mohammed Imran, the manager of neighborhood traffic, and Mr. Rosati is the manager of strategy for licensing and business services. Gentlemen, we're looking forward to your presentation, and then we'll have our delegations.
Good evening, Mayor Burton and members of council. Tonight, we'll be presenting the results of our review of town's on-street parking regulations and the proposed updates to the residential permit program. This report responds to previous direction from council to review the town's parking regulations, consider local circumstances, and identify solutions that balance parking needs with neighborhood livability. The review has been underway for over 2 years. In November 2024, Council directed staff to review Oakville's 3-hour parking limit and compare our regulations with other GTA municipalities. The purpose was to assess whether our current parking regulation continue to meet the increasing parking demand as a result of post-pandemic work from home trends. Following the review, staff reported to council in June 2025 and with 2 recommendations: increasing the maximum parking duration from 3 hours to 5 hours, excuse me, to have consistency with neighboring municipalities Mississauga, Milton, and Burlington, implementing a consistent town-wide overnight parking restrictions between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. Following that report, council directed staff to undertake additional work to assess the impact of these recommendations in neighborhoods around major parks and community centers, where parking demand is high in certain times of the year. Council also directed staff to review increasing complaints of on-street and off-street parking. The recommendations before tonight's council are the result of this additional review. Before discussing the recommendations, I would like to speak about the role of on-street parking in a community. On-street parking is a shared public resource that supports many users, including visitors, caregivers, contractors, and short-term community activities. While residents understandably prefer parking availability right in front of their homes, but it's important to recognize that parking within a municipal right-of-way is not reserved for any individual property owner. It may be used by anyone provided they comply with the town traffic bylaw. It's also important to distinguish between on-street and off-street parking. Town regulates parking on public roads through the traffic bylaw, while the responsibility of the providing and managing parking on private property remains with the property owner. Understanding these principles helps explain the recommendations in this report. This section of the report responds to Council's direction to consider parking impact around major parks and community centers. During our review, staff identified 16 facilities, 6 community centers, and 10 destination parks that may generate higher parking demand. These locations attract visitors from across Oakville and neighboring communities. And during busy periods, parking demand can spill onto the neighborhood streets. So our typical review for reviewing on-street parking concerns takes approximately 12 to 13 weeks to complete. For these identified areas, we are proposing an expedited review process to address parking concerns more quickly. So one example of the area is shown over here, Queen Elizabeth Community Center. The rest is attached in the appendices. The review area around each facility would extend approximately 400 meters, which represents about a 5-minute walk. When concerns are received on any streets within these areas, staff will complete investigations in 6 to 7 weeks. If the review identifies a need to restrict parking, timed or seasonal parking restrictions will be implemented to manage parking demand in these areas. It's important to note that residents will still be consulted whenever the road width can safely accommodate parking. The only thing changing is the shorter timeline for completing the review and using timed and seasonal-based parking restrictions. The second major component of the report deals with the emergency vehicle access. Over the past years, both residents and Oakville Fire Department have identified situations where parked vehicles on narrow streets restricted emergency vehicle access. Staff reviewed the operational requirements of a fire apparatus. As illustrated on the figure, fire truck requires 5.4 meters of unobstructed pavement for safe operation when outriggers are deployed. Staff also completed a town-wide review and identified over 700 streets that have 8.5 meter width or less, and parking is permitted on both sides of these streets. So based on the roadway width, fire trucks operational requirements, and engineering guidelines, staff develop a consistent framework to resolve these types of access issues in future. So for streets greater than 7 and up to 8.5 meter wide, parking would be permitted on one side only. And for streets for 7 meter wide or less, parking would be permitted on both sides, prohibited on both sides. I would like to emphasize one important point. This framework does not mean staff will immediately begin changing parking regulations on these more than 700 streets. It simply establishes how future concerns will be addressed upon receiving. Reviews will only be conducted after concerns are received from residents, fire department, or any other town department. Where road width safely accommodates parking, residents will continue to be consulted through parking surveys. And where emergency vehicle access cannot be maintained due to narrow road width, parking restrictions required for public safety would no longer depend on outcome of resident survey. So basically, our objective is to preserve as much on-street parking as possible while ensuring emergency vehicles can safely reach the residents when they need it. So I'll turn it over to my colleague to talk about the permit program.
The residential parking permit program review was undertaken to provide council with an assessment of the town's residential parking permit program. The intent was to evaluate whether the program is effectively meeting the current parking needs, also identifying emerging trends, opportunities for improvement. The current program is designed to provide temporary on-street parking for residents, visitors, and service providers, with a mix of free and paid permit options based on duration and need. Short-term demand is managed through free courtesy permits limited to 15 per year, while longer-term needs are assessed through paid permits at $6 per day or $55 per month. Additional permits are available for specific situations such as multi-vehicle permits or MVPs or contractor vehicle permits, CVPs. Most permits are now digital, requiring an online account, but no physical display is required. However, MVP and CVP permits remain paper-based, though the town is moving to digitalize MVPs and introduce approved rates starting this year. Finally, the 8th line permits are legacy exceptions introduced in 1994, allowing extended and overnight parking for residents of 1181 to 1219 8th line. The data clearly demonstrates strong growth in permit usage across all categories. Courtesy permits have increased from approximately 120,000 in 2023 to nearly 148,000 in 2025. About 90% of courtesy permit users only access these permits about 10 times or fewer per year, indicating they are using them as intended for temporary use. For paid permits, south of Dundas permits increased over 50% in 2 years, while north Dundas permits increased by approximately 69%, with the 30-day permits nearly doubling. With respect to multi-vehicle permits, while the number remains, the requests remain stable, they account for over 18,000 vehicles annually, which MES must locate parking for, which is a significant strain on operation resources. The residential parking permit review highlighted clear differences in how the program is being used north versus south of Dundas Street. In South Oakville, the program was introduced during COVID-19 to address temporary parking pressures. The use in the south is generally occasional, supporting visitors, short-term construction, and similar needs. There are no capacity limits, reflecting lower demand and greater availability of on-site parking. In contrast, North Oakville has operated under a structured framework since 2009 parking strategy. Residents rely much more on permits, often for their daily parking needs. Capacity limits are in place due to finite on-street supply and higher density development. These limits were originally based on inventory allocating approximately 75% of spaces to permit holders and 25% to short-term parking. Most areas operate at or near full utilization, with some approaching 100% capacity. Once limits are reached, no additional 30-day permits are issued unless existing permits are not renewed, although shorter-term permits remain available during that time. It is also important to note that the underlying parking inventory has not been fully updated in about 5 years, with adjustments made incrementally based on observed demand and available data. A jurisdictional scan comparing Oakville's residential permit program to several neighboring municipalities was also completed. Some key takeaways from the scan include Oakville aligns with peers on free temporary permits, generally 14 to 16 days per year. Oakville's permit pricing is mid-range when comparing to others. Oakville's last increase to this fee was in 2024 with a $5 increase to the monthly permit cost. In terms of winter parking, most municipalities implement full parking bans during snow events. Oakville currently relies on a more reactive approach tied to obstruction of snow removing operations. Finally, Oakville stands out in offering dedicated programs such as MVPs and CVPs, which are largely absent in comparative municipalities. Staff conducted a public survey in May of this year, receiving over 1,700 responses. The survey results reinforce several key findings. First, growing demand. Over 1/3 of respondents reported insufficient on-site parking, with this increasing to over 60% north of Dundas. This reflects broader trends such as higher densities and multi-vehicle households. Second, geographic divide. There's a clear distinction in how residents experience parking. Nearly half of the respondents north of Dundas use permits daily, compared to only about 12% in the south. Third, program support. Awareness is high, and approximately 3/4 of the respondents support the program. This indicates that residents view the program as a necessary tool for managing on-street parking. Fourth, management measures. Residents express support for practical targeted solutions such as restrictions during winter events or limiting access in certain cases, but not major changes to the program itself. And fifth, cost and fairness. While many residents indicated that the fees are high, others acknowledged that pricing plays a role in managing demand and discouraging overuse. So pulling together all the information gathered during the review, several key insights emerge. Overall, the program is functioning well and continues to meet the needs of the majority of its users. While demand for permits has increased, particularly in areas of the north, this growth is primarily driven out by broader factors such as multi-generational, multi-vehicle homes, and limited on-site parking supply, rather than deficiencies in the program itself. Flexibility of the program is a strength. With the range of permit types allows the program to respond to different use cases, from occasional use to more sustained parking needs. Feedback on pricing is mixed, but it's important to note that this fee serves as a policy function, and they help to ensure permits are used on a temporary solution, not a long-term substitute for private parking. MES continues to review these fees annually as part of the yearly budget process. Compared to peer municipalities, Oakville's program is more accessible and less administratively complex, particularly due to its digital and self-serve approach. Looking forward, MES will continue to monitor the residential parking permit program with a full review to be completed at least every 5 years. And we will continue to make improvements in current services based on trends and demands. So based on the findings, staff are recommending a measured incremental approach rather than a significant overhaul of the program. So we talk about program improvements. The first thing we're looking at is a capacity study update. Updating the north of Dundas parking capacity study will ensure that the permit limits are grounded in current conditions, especially as development continues. Second, digitalizing MVPs. Transitioning multi-vehicle permits to a digital system will improve tracking and accountability, support enforcement, and enable online payments. This aligns with the broader shift towards modern digital service delivery. Third, simplifying courtesy permits. Providing easier access without requiring full account setup will improve customer experience, particularly for infrequent users. Oh, don't go there, go back. I went back. Anyways, the other three that are on the street here, up. There we go, thank you. When it comes to policy and bylaw recommendations, staff are recommending first to strengthen weather event restrictions, introducing clear authority to restrict parking during significant weather events. This will improve snow clearing operations. It's important to note that enforcement will remain targeted and proportional, focusing on problem areas rather than a blanket enforcement. Second, accessible parking flexibility, allowing accessible permit holders to exceed time limits, improve equity and accessibility while maintaining overnight restrictions. And third, program streamlining. Discontinuing legacy programs such as the 8th Light permits reduces administrative complexity and improve consistency.
To summarize, staff recommends these changes to the parking regulations. First, increasing the maximum parking duration from 3 hours to 5 hours. Second, implementing town-wide overnight parking restrictions between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. And introducing a road-based framework to protect emergency vehicle access on narrow residential streets. These recommendations provide a balanced approach that responds to changing parking needs, improve consistency, protect emergency vehicle access, and provide a practical and equitable framework to manage on-street parking. Thank you, Mayor Burton and council members. We'll be pleased to answer any questions.
Well, we have a lineup to talk about parking. It's as if it's a popular topic. Councillor Giddings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, a couple of questions that were in the presentation. On-street parking be prohibited on one side where the existing width is 8.5 meters or less when requested. So is that the majority of the street? Is it one person? I'm just curious in terms of the details on when requested.
Through you, Mayor Burton. Councillor Gittings, is when we receive concerns about the emergency vehicle access either from fire department, from any other town department, or from a resident, we will review the street. If its road width is less than 8.5 meters, we'll restrict the parking on one side without doing a parking survey. Because our current process, currently we are relying on outcome of the parking surveys. So for this public safety matter, we just want to have the approval to restrict the parking on one side without having to do a parking survey.
I understand if fire or another department says, you know, this isn't working for us, but in terms of if the residents request it, could you elaborate if it was a resident-driven request?
If it's a resident-driven request related to emergency vehicle, it could be ambulance as well. So yes, we will restrict the parking.
Without a majority of the...
Without a majority.
All right. In terms of the widths, I get it. How do we account for the tar and chip that we have predominantly through the south, south of the QEW? Is that included in the measurement of the road width?
Through you, Mayor Burton, the soft shoulder is not included. In case where there's no curb and gutter, we are taking the pavement portion. The reason is fire truck needs hard surface, unobstructed hard surface to deploy the oil triggers, not the soft shoulders.
All right, I realize that a lot of well-meaning residents will remove that and run grass up to the asphalt area, but the tar and chip area, if that's the right term, that isn't load-bearing or weight-bearing?
Through you, Mayor Burton, Councillor Gittings, there's so much variety in the shoulders. Some are starting all the way up to the shoulder, so we kept it consistent based on the road width. We are not considering like whether it's a sod or it's a tar and chip, so we are just taking the pavement width, like the hard surface width.
Right, that brings me to, just thought of that. What about, so curbs make it easy to measure?
That's true.
All right.
Make it easy.
To support parking management within special areas, the 400-meter boundary, the maps were in there. So could you explain a little further that 400-meter boundary, what that will allow the residents to request?
Typically, through your Mayor Burton, Councillor Gittings, it's 400 meters is used in transportation planning. It's a typical walking distance, 5-minute walk to any destination. So that's most of the people don't park more than 500, like more than 5 minutes walk. So these are the streets, those are most likely to have impact of like the spilling of parking into the neighborhoods. These are the streets where mostly the parking will happen, so we have taken 400-meter radius. So any streets within those areas, if we receive a complaint, we'll do the review within 6 to 7 weeks and use timed and seasonal parking restrictions.
And the percentage of agreeing residents on that, that would be by majority of households then?
Yes, if the street can accommodate parking, if the road width is as per the narrow streets criteria, if it meets, it can accommodate parking, we will still consult the residents. If it doesn't, we will restrict the parking based on the narrow road width criteria.
So we have challenges at Gerlach Gardens occasionally as a result of visitors there. And so the 400-meter radius could well end up banning parking in the side streets adjacent to Gerlach?
Through you, Mayor Burton, if that street is within that 400-meter radius of any facility, yes, it will. But I don't remember off my head like if it's within 400 meter or not.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the map.
Yes.
Similarly, the community center, I'm looking at the 400 meters, and that could have some unintended consequences down at Wallace Park, for example, where there's Great New Park, Winter ice, basketball courts and so on, it would remove the parking off of Allen and Shedden, which is where we like people to park because the curlers get upset when we take up their parking lot. So I'm just wondering how we would deal with areas such as that.
So in that case, Councillor Gittings, if the road width is like more than 8.5 meters, so we will still consult with the residents in that case.
Yeah, some of the roads maybe, certainly not all of them. All right, I see a lineup on the screen here.
So through the mayor, I just wanted to clarify with respect to the expedited process, it is with respect to the 3 to 5 hour increase that we are proposing as part of this report, and not the narrow road component. So just to clarify, that expedited process is to address the 3 to 5 hour increase. So should residents on a street within that 400 meter or 5-minute walking radius have concerns with the increase of that parking time, they would fall within that expedited process. So just to clarify the intent of the expedited component with respect to the report that we're bringing forward today. The narrow street component would not fall into the expedited process, because as part of this report and the bylaw that is proposed to come at a future date would address, again, the requirement for parking surveys no longer to be needed. So again, to address the 3 to 5 hour increase, that's how we're addressing the special areas or the areas to address the special needs as per the June 2025 direction to staff.
Thank you. I appreciate the clarification. I guess I've got a couple of concerns. One of them being people that may reside on a narrow street are tired of people parking there, and they say, let's get together and we can stop people from parking there. They may not realize that they will not be able to park there either. And I'm also curious if we've looked at other areas. We've had a rich discussion on King Street. Is it possible to convert that to a one-way street that would allow us to keep parking on the one side and prevent those residents from having to block the people above them or beside them and remove literally scores of parking spaces in a busy area?
So through the mayor, we have done an extensive review looking at all of the widths through the areas. What I will say for King Street and the downtown, as you know, originally in 2016, I believe we did that extensive review of converting on-street parking within the downtown area. So as part of the study, we did not consider that. Again, we were trying to balance the need in terms of access for emergency vehicles, as well as some of the concerns that have been brought forward already to staff with respect to narrow streets, which has led us today to the recommendation that is before you.
Thank you.
Councillor Adams, your turn.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to, I think we have a delegation, but before that, I wanted to give you a motion to move the staff recommendation, but with an amended Part 7, and get that on the floor for discussion, and so the members of the public know what might be coming. That replaced Part 7 is that recommendation 7 be replaced with that staff notify residents residing between 1181 and 1219 8th line of the town's intention to discontinue the 8th line parking permit program and undertake consultation with affected residents regarding options for the proposed discontinuation process, and report the results of the consultation to council prior to changes to the 8th line parking permit program. And I wanted to thank our staff for the consultations they had with Councillor Lischina and I a couple of times over the last few weeks, and the discussion around 8th line. This is a somewhat unique location given its long history, decades-long history of parking. It's a very narrow street, window street on 8th line. I'm glad that our predecessors had the foresight not to allow 20 driveway access points onto 8th line at that location. but the window street is quite narrow. It does have regular parking on it, which residents regularly use, and we want to have an opportunity to consult with them further about how to manage the parking on the street.
Councilor Chenna, are you the seconder for this? Thank you. Council, it's my intention after your questions to call the one registered delegation. Looking at the number of you who want to speak, I'll just ask if you'd like to pause your questions to hear from the registered delegate. I'll take that as a yes, and I'll ask the clerk to call the registered delegation.
Matthew Nicol.
Mr. Nicol, thank you for your patience. Welcome. Council looks forward to your information.
Thank you very much. All right, let's just do this. Okay, so I titled this one Smart Parking in the Oakville Smart City. And I started off this slide here with the ISO Technical Committee 268, Sustainable Cities and Communities. Basically, the ISO is an international standards organization, and countries have their own standards organizations that are members of the ISO and the IEC. So with this one, basically, it talks about standardization in sustainable cities, aka smart cities, in both rural and urban environments, contributing to sustainable development. Next slide, please. Sorry for the blurry image. This is Patricia McCarney. She runs what is called the World Council on City Data, and she is a member of ISO Technical Committee 268. The World Council on City Data basically hooks up cities to the ISO standards, and she operates, in Mississauga, Vaughan, Oshawa, but she has an office at UFT. Next slide, please. More redundant stuff here on smart cities in terms of contributing to sustainable development through, in particular, mobility and transport. Digitization, so you can look at your digitalized MVPs like we were speaking about earlier. And as well, it gets into ICTs, aka information communication technologies, which are your smartphones for smart payments. Next slide. This, of course, applies to rural and urban areas, especially when we take into consideration things like smart farming, but that's a conversation for another day. Next slide, please. So smart cities implementing a smart parking ecosystem. This was a report that was addressed to Transport Canada, actually. So incorporated in 1960, you have J.J. McKay Canada Limited, or McKay Meters, is a Canadian-based company dealing with parking technology. Next slide, please. So in 1985, they introduced the first fully electronic parking meter, and then by the 90s, you had the smart chip technology implemented in parking equipment, as well as wireless technology, and then by 2003, credit card acceptance. Next slide, please. So various additions to a certified parking meter, including basically a recycling emblem, but again, the circular economy and circular economy models are a conversation for another time. Next slide. So as smartphones became streamlined, the phone booth met its demise. So when mobile payments come into play, it ushers significant change in the industry and possibly even diminishes other forms of payments, including cash, which I have actually seen in Mississauga libraries that don't take cash. I'm from Mississauga, by the way. Smart parking equipment providers manage all forms of payment and support, including, next slide, coin acceptance, credit card, contactless payment, mobile payment, and that smart cities should introduce a mobile payment program that's integrated with smart parking equipment. Next slide. So the head of the Standards Council of Canada is Francois Collier, who is also a member of the IEC and the ISO. Next slide, please. So C, smart everything everywhere. Internet of Things systems are key enablers of smart everything everywhere. Internet of Things is how devices connect to each other, like your phone to your car. Next slide, please. And you get into different forms of, smart everything. So smart payments, like I was saying, smart buildings, smart society. Next slide. So Honk and 11X collaborate to enhance parking experience and traffic flow in the town of Oakville. So Honk deals with contactless payments for parking and mobility, and 11X developed Exact Park, which deals with real-time parking occupancy and availability and payment capability to drivers in Oakville. Next slide, please. 11X's smart parking solution, Exact Park features SPSX sensors that are basically fully embedded in the ground in 1,200 spaces in downtown Oakville. This number might have changed since this article was released. And it shows whether parking spots are available or not. Next slide. And drivers can check their phone or computer, a digital variable message signage, or the Honk app, which provides online payment capabilities. Next slide. This is the digital twin. Next slide, please. So their definition, the ISO IEC definition of a digital twin, basically deals with data connections that enable convergence between the physical and digital states at an appropriate rate of synchronization. So people that are watching this video, this is my digital twin, hello. Next slide, please. A digital twin is basically a digital representation of a real world entity or system. So it can apply to utilities and that sort of a thing, not just simply a digital image. And it mirrors a process of a physical object and a massive real-time, real-world data measurement. And mirroring is done through synchronization using data streams which are generated by sensors and transactions. So think about the mobile payments I was talking about and the sensors that are embedded into the ground. And digital twins are key enablers of smart everything everywhere. Next slide, please. Environmental monitoring, Internet of Things environmental monitoring gets into smart cities, smart sensors, monitoring networks, and cloud-based telemetry. Next slide, please. We have Martin Meyer, a member of the IEEE, who works at the Optical Zeitgeist Laboratory, which is part of INRS in Quebec, the Institut National de la Recherche Scientifique. I apologize for the French pronunciation. He sits on a review board for the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council of Canada, and he works in various fields from robotics, 6G, tactile internet, extended reality, and Web3 technologies. Web3 means blockchain, that's what we'll be getting into. Next slide, please. So Web3 ecosystems are purpose-driven tokens that act as incentives and rewards users for contributing to the growth of decentralized applications and blockchain-based networks. So the next slide, please. I'll elaborate on those purpose-driven tokens in a bit. So basically, digital and physical world are connected through intelligent machines, creating an internet of senses, and observing and acting in real time can be done by looking into the past and future, which is where the parking sensors come into play. Next slide. So this all builds up to something called Society 5.0 here. And basically it says emerging cyber-physical social systems aims to integrate humans into cyber-physical systems at social, cognitive, and physical levels. This is part of a build-up toward Society 5.0. The term was coined in Japan and basically represents a quote-unquote super smart society where we're basically teleoperating robots in our day-to-day life. Next slide. This is all part of something called the biodigital convergence, which is the merging of biological life with digital components, also known as the nano-bio-info-cogno experiment. These four sections, nano for nanotechnology and nanoscience, bio for biotechnology and gene editing, which we won't be able to get into today, info for IT, computer stuff, and cogno for cognitive science, whether neuroscience or psychology. Next slide. So these are some various examples of applications and technologies involved in the biodigital convergence, which I did not sign up for, and I don't think anybody signed up for if they don't even know it's happening, that they are a part of this experiment, and that's exactly why I came here today. So that will conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you for your information.
No problem. Do I have questions, or are those hands raised from the previous from the previous individuals?
I just have one, and we do have them in the road in downtown, and they fail. And so do you know, is there a Is it a weather condition that might cause them to fail? Do you have any insight into that?
Not really, no, but I understand that in stormwater in particular, that monitoring, sensors are also used for monitoring weather conditions as well, and there are various kinds of biosensors. So I'm not sure what you're getting at about it failing for are you saying that it's failing for parking, or like, could you elaborate a little bit?
It doesn't accurately report the parking because the signal is not working.
Oh, well, that's unfortunate, but regardless, I mean, when it comes down to sensors in and of itself too, like they're integrated in smart farming, measuring when a crop grows, and then you eat that and your body's literally hooked up to the internet, right? That's not something I, consented to, but that's again a conversation for another day.
Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you for hearing me out, and take care of yourselves.
Councillor Nanda?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Burton. Thank you for the presentation. Just had a couple of questions. I know we had discussed this previously as well, but the bylaw to prohibit on-street parking during significant weather events, we already have issues in the north with parking. So I know we had a little bit of a discussion of how that would work, realizing that residents don't really have anywhere else to park. We do agree that they should not be there to allow for snow plowing, but how do we work that in, having this no parking during significant weather events?
Yeah, through the mayor, that's a great question. And we had many lengthy discussions about what other alternatives we can provide for residents where to park during these significant weather events. Ultimately, though, it comes down to it's going to be a targeted approach. So we'll consolidate with Roads and Works as they're out clearing snow, looking at the streets where they say, okay, we need this street cleared in order to properly remove the snow. So can you please get these guys off for a day or two, or maybe move them to one side of the street and alternatively come back the next day. During that time, they will be able to park in other areas that are still allowed, even though while we may be under a significant weather event. But ultimately, they will need to find alternative locations during that time, unfortunately.
Okay, so that was the secondary concern. If we say, for example, take a few streets and say, okay, you are not allowed to park here for a day or two, we need to clear the snow. Now they go and park on 3-4 other streets that are now full of cars. Now the snowplow can't get there. So how does that work?
With that, through you, the mayor, so if we will identify all the streets in that area that we could find potentially coming up for that ban. So we would indicate which streets when we send out the notifications to those streets that are being impacted and provide them with options of where they should be parking.
Okay, so for example, for this winter coming up, say we have a significant weather event, are you looking at you're saying you're not gonna do it as a blanket, like you have to get off the street. But if it's targeted, I'm still not understanding properly. It's gonna affect other streets, and those streets also need to be plowed. I just feel like we're still gonna run into the same problem.
Through the mayor, yeah, we may. Did you want to add something? Sorry, through the mayor. Yes, we will have to work with the residents to make sure we have those options available to them to where we can lessen the impact to their parking needs. But ultimately, it does come down to we'll need those streets cleared in order to provide the proper snow removal operations. Sorry, Phoebe, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I'll just add a few things. It's almost like it's a progression between the streets. So if you're doing a couple of streets, those streets park will go to the next 2 streets. And you're right, those 2 streets wouldn't be plowed because they already had cars on them anyway. So we're just filling it with car for a short period of time, get our plowed over, we'll move, hopefully we can get them to move back. So it's more of an active progression of little zones as we move forward. And then at the end, it will be each of the street will get cleared and all the people will go to the clear streets and we start plowing the one that's not cleared. So imagine all the street that wasn't plowed anyway would have had cars on it. anyway. So we're just moving some cars there temporarily, so then we could start clearing one street at a time. So it will be a progression as we move from one area to the next.
So usually though, when it's parked, you have maybe a couple of cars on a street. And so still the rest of the road can get cleared. My concern is, and what we have in North Oakville is sightline issues, people not being able to get out of their driveway. So if one side gets cleared and the other side does not get cleared at all in the one day, that's gonna cause significant issues as well.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, what we have right now is exactly what you described. It's a little bit of plowing, a car is in the way, a little bit of plowing, car in the way. What we're working with MES is then we'll get some of those cars that's, I'll say, intermittently in the way, move them to another street, get that street cleared just not on one side, but on both sides. And then get all the other little intermittent streets, people to come over, park here, and start to clear that. At the bottom line, safety is our primary concern. We always need to clear that one lane. As you know, that's what we do first. It's about getting that second lane cleared. It's typically the cars in our way. So then we always get that one lane. You're never gonna have a problem with not having the one lane cleared, so that wouldn't be a concern because of this new arrangement. This new arrangement is just allow us clear more beyond the one lane. So you always have that one lane.
Okay. So I think our only concern in the north is if a little bit more work or thought needs to be put into doing this part before we approve it. So I'm wondering if we're looking at maybe taking that part out of this as well to look, at least I know for North Oakville, I still don't see how, I still see that there could be issues that could be caused because streets are not gonna get plowed on time.
So, sorry, Phoebe, if it's okay, through your worship, maybe I can provide a little more clarity to the process that we're envisioning. So essentially what we'd like to do is, and we did this a little bit last year, send out a notice. We have all the emails for all the permit holders. We know their information. Okay. So we will send out a notice saying, hey, by the way, there's going to be a significant weather event. We're monitoring it. If it happens, please don't park on the road. Then we'll tell them again when it's declared, hey, a significant weather event has been declared. Please don't park your car on the road. Please find alternate locations so that snow clearing can be effectively done. So we're hoping the plows are going to go by. They're going to go do their thing that they have done for every year in the past, and they do a wonderful job. But what happens is you still have those vehicles that are parked on the road, and they'll move. They have to dig themselves out, but they don't clear that windrow that's been around the car. It still has to be cleared. So what we're going to do is take those problematic streets where there is significant issues and say, okay, this street, Street A, we've noticed an issue, so we'll email everybody within that zone and say, Street A needs to be cleared. Please park on Street B, C, or D in the meantime. Then we'll clear that street. And then we'll go to the next street and say, this street now needs to be cleared. So when we say it's targeted, we're really meaning targeted. It's not going to be a community. It's going to be street by street. And we'll separate them out so that it can be reasonably done, understanding that there's very limited parking within that area, especially when there's snow. So it will be very targeted, and we'll move over. And what we're really looking to do is grow this program over years. So because this is going to be the first sort of kick at the can, we're going to hopefully have this tool in our toolbox, and that's really how we're looking at it. It's not going to be blanket enforcement. It is a tool in our toolbox to enable the snow clearing in those areas, to deal with those portions of roadway that we haven't been able to effectively deal with because we can't say you have to get off the road. We're just saying, you know, can you please, or hey, shovel around it, and it's just, it's not effectively working. So this gives us the added tool to be able to do that, and we will obviously learn from each season as it goes by and make changes to ensure the program improves over time.
Okay, so we're saying we're gonna be very active in targeting those permit holders and be active in communication of exactly what needs to be done to try to make it a smooth transition for the snow clearing.
Through your worship, absolutely.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you for the information.
Councillor Shia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for the presentation. So
From the report, it indicates that the North Oakville, there's a lot of those capacities already near or at. So if demand is continue to exceed supply, so what criteria staff will use and to determine when permit capacity could be increased or parking regulation adjusted?
So through the mayor, you're speaking to the North Dundas.
Yes, North of
permit
Dundas.
capacities?
That's right.
30-day permits?
Yeah.
So correct, those do come near or full utilization almost on a daily basis in some areas. That is why one of our recommendations is we need to do a study and get the appropriate counts of what is available on the streets and what is going to become available as development continues. Right now, we are doing our best to manage these capacity limits. We increase them based on demand and based on using tools such as Google Maps and as we get notified of streets becoming active. So we need to have that active, we need to have that accurate count completed so that we can have an accurate number of those capacity limits so that we know what we can offer the residents of those areas.
Yes, so in your report, so you recommend they will do the update for at least every 5 years about all those research, right?
We're hoping to do the study at least every 5 years, yes. The review of the program for sure, every 5 years. The study, we have it in our forecast. Actually, I think for 2028, but we want to move it up to 2027 and then move it up every so often.
Yeah, so my concern is, do you think that every 5 years is like frequently enough? Because based on the data, so with the permit demand on North Oakville is increased by 69% in the past 2 years. So will staff consider conducting review more regularly, like if, example, there is a significant new project started or complete, so how we ensure the permit capacity keep the pace and actually parking demands?
Yes, through the mayor, our words were at least every 5 years. We would be more willing to do it every other year or every third year, depending on how we see demand and increase in the permits increase over the time. So we're open to doing it on a more frequent basis, not just every 5 years.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Councillor Knoll, it's your turn.
Thank you, Worship. Thanks for the presentation and for the work on this project. Hearkening back to our conversation that we had during the ward consultations, I just have a couple follow-ups with you on that, if you don't mind. First of all, we did talk about, and this applies to north of Dundas as well as Laneway Community south of Dundas, where there really isn't an alternative when there is the snow emergencies. And I think Councillor Nanda made it very clear about the importance of finding alternatives or implementing customer service so we're able to help. And I'm wondering if one of the things we talked about was clarifying the rules around the use of town parking lots within proximities, parks, community centers, et cetera. Did you do any work on that to discuss that with your colleagues in the other department to see if that's a possibility?
Through you, Your Worship, we did consult with Parks and Open Space regarding using community centers and parks, parking lots. North of Dundas, there's not a lot of parking lots associated with parks. However, there is a bit of a complication when it comes to that. And really where that lies is, they're not always convenient. So for the resident, if we said, oh, you'll need to park within that, say, 16 mile, and that's the closest facility to you, what we'd be asking people to do is walk potentially a kilometer maybe to their home, or that 400 or 500 meters. They may have groceries, they may have small children, they may be elderly, and we're asking them to do it in a significant weather event. So from our standpoint, it's not ideal as far as options for them, which is why one of the reasons why we opted not to present that to council today. Another consideration was the cost. So with that, the facilities are certainly one of the priorities for community centers to clear the snow, make sure that we have the parking lots available for different events that are going to be held and for the users of those facilities. So if we allow overnight parking, we run into some of the complications that we see downtown in our commercial lots where we do have overnight parking, is we have to hand shovel them out. So it is a very expensive proposition. When we start looking at those larger parking lots, it could be very costly as far as an opportunity for us to consider. And we're really just shifting a cost from roads and works in doing the street-by-street clearing to parks and open space. So we figured just from a standpoint of customer service, keeping them closest to home was the best option.
Okay, thank you. Clearly you did look into it, so thank you for that. With respect to your comment to Councillor Nanda about, you called it progression of little zones. I'm just curious, how do you manage that? Because it's a big logistical ballet that you'd be doing, managing that process. How would you, it seems impractical, so how do you feel that's a viable option?
So through you, Your Worship, it is going to be a challenge, without a doubt. And having this as I'll call it a pilot for just the sake of ease, having this as a bit of a pilot will really be a learning experience. We'll be able to find out how much resources is going to have to be dedicated to this. We understand that this is going to be something that we're going to have to do cooperatively with our partners over in Roads and Works Operations to make sure that we're really using all of our resources the most effective manner. So it is going to be a bit of a learning experience. We are thankful that we have all the contact information for residents, and we will, grow as we learn some lessons through this program.
Leading up to the next major snow event, which is thankfully far, far away, although my Alexa told me there'd be no snow today, which was really interesting. Are you going to do any education around this to help people understand what the expectations are, and not just sort of drop this on them at the last minute?
So through you, Your Worship, we are planning on doing some education with this. One of the main things is to change the terms and conditions of our permits. That's something that every permit holder sees. It's something they'll understand. So that will be provided. Again, I had mentioned a little bit earlier how we do email notices out. So we'll continue to do that. We'll continue to educate. But that it is definitely going to be a learning curve for a lot of people.
Okay, also going back to our conversation during the ward consultation, I suggested the use of SMS technology, which is probably more reliable than email. Have you done any work on that, or are you still working on that?
Through you, Your Worship, we're still working on that one. We will get back to you, though.
Okay. Moving on to something that I didn't find in the report, and I only thought about it after the consultation. So we have in our ward, like every ward across town, short-term accommodation issues. Specifically, I'll name the brand Airbnb. And in some cases, multiple cars are using the short-term permit for one household. So I'm not going to give addresses, but in one particular case, I know over this last weekend had 5 cars as part of and basically took up most of the street because the Airbnb was fully used. Is there any way that we can correlate the permits? Because I know right now it's permit to plate. Is there any way to correlate the permit to the residents so that we're not getting into that overloading situation?
Through Your Worship.
Or I guess I should, before that, does that defeat the program altogether? I'm kind of trying to determine if that's an issue.
Does a little bit.
Yeah.
So again, that was one of the things that we looked at, and we looked at our partners over in Burlington. They have a resident-based program.
Yeah.
It is very labor intensive, and they have, I believe, 2.5 FTEs running that program alone, and it requires the applicant to come in personally to the office. So we're really trying to balance customer service and flexibility of the program to the effectiveness to deal with those types of issues. So we really sort of lean to the flexibility, and we'll deal with particular circumstances through other means wherever possible.
What about, I gave you a compound question, so I apologize, but the first part of that question was, can you in any way correlate the plate to the address so that you can avoid have a reasonable limit?
Yeah, through you, Your Worship, right now we can't correlate a plate specifically to an address, but we can rejig our application a little bit to start asking for address information. So that is something that we've been contemplating and may bring in the future.
Okay, and last thing is I just like to better understand this, and I remember this from our conversation too, and we talked about this a lot, and that is that the issue around the Oakville Fire Department's concerns about the road width and less than 7 meters. Why would you make that optional? So if it's truly a safety issue that the OFD has determined, why wouldn't we just make that a blanket application? Why would we do it on a case-by-case basis? Is that not a safety risk?
So through the mayor, so what we have done is provided that restriction through the bylaw that will be coming forward. There are some streets that are already less than 8.5 meters that already have restrictions on them. Okay. So this would be an approach that is complaint driven, so that for those streets that don't have those restrictions, we would then go and reactively address those parking restrictions. But again, there is a mix of streets already with the restrictions that are narrow, like I mentioned already. So it provides us that opportunity to look at it at a case-by-case basis as they do come in.
Okay, but if the fire department is saying it needs a certain width with its outriggers, and we know that, why would we make that complaint driven and not just make that a blanket case across the board? I'm trying to understand that you've identified a potential safety issue, and that just concerns me from a risk management perspective. Why would we not just say you can't have dual side parking if it's that width, period, not wait for the complaint? I know that's our tradition in Oakville. We enforce on complaint, but when it comes to public safety, I'm concerned that maybe we've identified a safety issue that we're not addressing.
So through the mayor, I think for this particular issue, we are relying on our colleagues at Oakville Fire for their experience on the roadways. Again, we provide them the opportunity to restrict, but again, it's through their experience on the roadways that we are relying on if there is a safety issue and through their experience traversing through these roadways.
So they're 100% comfortable with that recommendation?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. Thank you, Worship.
Councillor Dudek, thank you for your patience. You're next. However, we can't hear you.
Sorry, thank you. Okay, thought I clicked it and I didn't. I thank you for the meetings that you organized for the various wards. That was very, very helpful for, I know in our situation, to have the opportunity to ask some questions. I do agree with what Councillor Knoll raised in terms of the residency. And I guess my concern is that in some areas, there are streets that are being over subscribed to, shall we say, and as a result, if we knew, and maybe that's the question I want to ask, when we see something like that, do staff take the time to drill down and find out A, why that is taking place, and B, if in fact there are people from outside the area who are using it? It's a concern given the fact that, and I appreciate what you mentioned with Burlington and the 2 FTEs and that, but it's going to be worse before it gets better, especially with the parking restrictions the province has put on so many of these new developments. They've got to park somewhere, okay? And so the reality is we're going to have to come to terms with it ourselves. The other, I have a problem not increasing the cost of the permit. The reason being, when I look at ours is 5082 is in Mississauga. We, as one gentleman that is a constituent of ours has often said, you're not, you're making it too permissible for them by allowing that to take place. In other words, rather than deal with the issue on their property, they automatically opt for another parking permit on the street. So I have a problem with that. The other one is, here we are. Oh, I mentioned the flagging. Okay, if we have an area in question. If we're seeing that a place, or road rather, is at overcapacity, do we not, like obviously if someone's issued a permit and they can't park, even though they have a permit, you had intimated in the report that there's no assurance you're going to get a parking spot. Is that correct?
Through you, Your Worship, I'll try and tackle them all together. Please let me know if I've missed
Sorry.
anything. It's okay. There are a number of things that we considered. And as I'll add on to what I had explained to Councillor Knoll, all streets, of course, on-street parking is public parking. It is not dedicated to a particular resident. It's not dedicated to a particular set of residents on a street. It is public parking for a number of uses, whether it be the residents, visitors, contractors. All of those things are uses for that parking. Now, if you look to, again, our partners in Burlington, not only do they restrict by, they issue the permit by resident, but they will also restrict by street. And again, that's where you sort of get into your point where you talk about capacity on a single street. So you would have to measure the capacity on each and every street in Oakville. Again, extraordinarily labor intensive to figure out what
Wow.
the capacity is within those. And then you'd have to restrict those parking permits to each street. Now, that makes it very difficult for visitors and that sort of thing to find parking or potentially access parking and to manage that program. So again, we've really opted for the flexibility that our current program allows. And it has the convenience of sort of being able to come in and use every street that is around and really maximize the opportunities. If there is, and I'll call it overuse, and it turns into unpermitted parking, so in no parking, no stoppings, within a meter of the driveway, that's something that we can deal with through enforcement processes and going out and providing that street by street enforcement where we do find that there's particular issues. I'll sort of put that one aside, and then you had, sorry, I mentioned another one.
The cost.
The cost,
The
thank you very
cost
much.
was one. Yeah.
So we also, again, looked into the cost and did a comparison. So as Steve had mentioned, we did raise the price a couple of years ago by the $5. We are looking at the cost of the permits again, and potentially we'll have an increase, although I will suggest that it's likely going to be moderate, that we're suggesting to council as part of the permit fee review later this year. And one of the reasons why we're not proposing a significant increase is because we're really, and one of the counselors, and forgive me, I can't remember which one it was right now, had mentioned, have you looked at condo parking? Have you looked at apartment parking? Thank you, Councillor Adams. And to find out what they're charging and where are we in relation to that. So we did actually start digging around and trying to find a little bit more information on that. And although our on-street parking permit is currently less expensive, I'll say it's a little more affordable than a lot of the apartment building or condo parking that we're finding, we also don't, to your point, Councillor Dedek, we don't guarantee parking. So you may not get that parking spot in front of your building that you want. You may not be able to park there all the time. You may have to go to another street. So there is a convenience component that comes along with that too. There really is going to be a balance where we say, we're too cheap, we're too inexpensive, because now we're the alternative to paying for that parking spot at the apartment building. So we really do have to find that balance, and we'll be looking a little bit deeper into that before bringing our fee proposal back later this year.
Thank you. That is bang on in terms of the one gentleman that we deal with has indicated that he rents his for $124 a month, okay, and he's in a condo. So I mean, that's more than half, okay, that he's charging more than what the town is. The other question I have is, if you have a situation where there's too much parking on a regular basis and it's the same cars, have we given any consideration to limiting how many permits can be issued in a year? And the reason I ask that is if we're now using municipal public road allowance to take the place of parking on their property, why are we not monitoring that and saying you should be doing something on your property, or maybe that fourth car is not feasible?
So through you, Your Worship, we really are looking town-wide, and I'll go back to north of Dundas a little bit as well. there is a need for many residents to have on-street parking, and it's something that they really rely upon. And I'll say that's north and south. So with that, we're trying to be respectful of the need that is out there. There are some people that are going to require that, although it is supposed to be a temporary measure, and that is reinforced with the fact that we require them to reapply for their permit every month. It is something that we do understand is a need. And if we were to say, well, you can only have a permit for 10 months out of the year, then they're potentially having 2 months where they're parking illegally and suffering the consequences of that. So we're trying to find that balance. And again, it's understanding that they're not going to be guaranteed anything. That is the risk of relying on a permit, especially where there's areas where they may not get one if we hit the limit. So I think at some point, the limited accessibility of on-street parking will dictate what the use is going to be.
The last question I have, and I dare say Councillor Chisholm's going to be raising it, but it's in regards to the road width and the fact that people are will not be able to use parking on their street due to their road width. I know in some situations in very old sections of Oakville, okay, that road width is something we maybe have to look at. Like Imran, you referenced the shoulder is not stable enough to deploy for the fire. Have we ever considered paving those shoulders in order to enable that to take place?
Through your worship, so with respect to increasing the road width, through our urbanization components, we can look at that, but we would take and consider stormwater, which does look at different types of measures such as ditches, and there is a initiative to look at green infrastructure here first. So we would try to balance that out with all of the needs within the roadway. There are some roadways in the queue right now where we are looking at on-street parking as well as urbanization as well as drainage issues. So again, that would be looked at once the roadway is up for rehabilitation or restoration. But again, those are opportunities that we can do to help mitigate some of the parking restrictions on some of the streets through the areas that have it less than 8.5 meters.
Just want to thank you very much for all the hard work that the various departments put into this. And I can totally appreciate it's a complex issue and different needs, different geographic areas have different wants and needs. And I know you're trying to balance for the majority. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Chisholm, it's your turn.
Thank you, Worship. This is a very complex, complicated challenge, especially in our area in Ward 2. And I know during COVID, we've had some challenge with the parking, and we did a great job doing that during that process. I've got, not I personally, but within Ward 2, we have a lot of roadways less than 6.5 or 6.5. And the challenge we always have is that we have, and Selena can attest to this, we've had many, many meetings with the residents in West Harbor area, specifically with respect to parking. Parking is one street where we have a challenge, and that's Chisholm. Chisholm Street's a challenge with respect to parking once, and they're only doing it on one side. The rest of the area is relatively clear. But however, we have parking for contractors and parking for family and so forth. I think we'll have a challenge. My phone will start ringing when this, if ever comes out that we're restricting parking. I'm probably on 30 streets in Ward 2 with respect, because they're all at 6.5, 6.0, so they would be nullified. Absolutely no parking whatsoever. Now, understanding the psyche of our residents, some don't like having parking in front of their house. But they have to remember, if they have a contract coming in, that works too. So they can't have the best and not have They want exclusivity is what I'm saying. And unfortunately, that's not how we look at it. I understand the width and so forth. I guess the question is, how many issues and challenges have we had with first responders and so forth with respect to not getting through on these roadways?
Through your worship, as included as part of the report, we have 3 identified streets where this concern actually came up. And so I believe it's Greendale, Wass, and
Crescent, Greendale, and Oakdale.
Oakdale Street. Sorry, I apologize. That was a lot of streets to remember. Those are streets already in the queue that have the concern with respect to narrow roads. I believe Chief Bossino is on a line that perhaps could speak to some of the experience that they have on other streets with narrow that they've had challenges gaining access to.
Thank you, Councillor, and through Mayor Burton. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to it. With our increase in call volume, we've seen a significant increase in call volume since COVID, up 54% since 2023. And the challenge that we have is not only for the deployment of outriggers associated with our aerial devices, which is that 5.4 meter piece, but we also have our aerials that are also running as frontline pumps. Our smallest vehicle being pumps, rescues, squads, or aerials is 31 feet. So it's not only the width of the vehicle, it's turning radius as well as some of those challenges. Our aerial apparatus are 46 feet long. So you can appreciate that the challenges just in sheer width and length and turning radius as well as tailboards have been experiences that that we've experienced on different roadways. Certainly, in the older portions, those narrow widths have presented themselves as challenges. It has not gotten to the point, and to Councillor Knoll's point earlier, where we have indicated that we were unable to satisfy a response solely based on roads being blocked. I dare say, in the event of an emergency involving a fatality or a house burning, we will find our way to that spot. And I dare say we will get there no matter what. But the challenges that we've experienced have been fairly significant. So we will continue to work with our partners in the corporation in trying to find the best strategies possible to ensure that we're not being reactive as opposed to trying to be proactive where possible. Last year alone, we ran over 12,500 calls, which far eclipses some of our neighboring comparators in the large urban group 14. That eclipses, Kitchener, Markham, and some other cities for call response types. So I hope that provides a little bit of context. The good news is it hasn't found us in a severely negative fashion, and let's hope it doesn't find us that way.
Thank you, Chief. The challenge, significant. What do you mean by significant, Chief? In your comments.
As far as total numbers, I can get the total numbers to you. But what I would say is that given our call volume responses, those streets have probably found challenges in response, where I'm talking about, like, we have a minimum, both our ISO standard and our NFPA standard is 240 seconds response as our frontline pump to any fire or major incident. So any kind of delay where we're either waiting on a vehicle or we are challenged to get through tight areas, any kind of delay puts us in a negative response capacity. So when I say significant challenges, I'm not talking about necessarily, a vehicle on X street. I'm talking about call response times into areas. We have strategically placed 9 stations throughout the corporation, and then, of course, proposals in the Fire Master Plan for stations 10 and 11. But we have 12 frontline apparatus responses for those 12,500 calls. So when I say significant, it's sheer call volume. It's the amount of streets that are designated to those the narrow widths. And so when I say significant, it's simply the sheer number of calls that we're having to travel on these roads.
Okay, specifically for narrow roadways, is that, so that's the correlation?
That's the correlation, yes.
Okay, thank you. I guess where I'm coming from with the streets in Ward 2, we have a lot of narrow streets. Parking's not really the issue on street, it's contractors and so forth, what happens all the time. I really don't know how this is going to go down if we approve this, because my phone will start ringing saying, because the process, I'm still not fully aware how this is going to work, because Imran was saying that one person can make the call, and then we're going to have staff start looking and investigating it. That concerns me. I like the whole concept of how we do traffic calming on I think, help me out here, it's 30% of the residents in the area within a geographic area. I like that because it's a majority. I'm really having concerns that one person in your neighborhood can say, I want to have that investigated, and because of the situations on the road. Is that a safe assumption?
Through your worship, yeah, that would be a safe assumption. It would be one request where we would start the investigation to confirm, one, that the road width does fall within those categories with respect to restriction, and then two, working with our colleagues in fire to ensure, again, there is that need to restrict parking in order to ensure that they meet those response times. What I would say when the reason for removing the voting component, it is a public safety issue, and so we would like to keep that to the professionals with respect to providing those life safety measures or keeping public safety as paramount with staff.
I understand public safety. I don't see the quantification on that. On speaking with the chief, I understand that, but I haven't seen any hard evidence in saying it's a public safety issue in these roadways right now. That's what I'm having a difficult time wrapping my head around it. The reality of it is yes, if it's response times and so forth and getting down to those streets and so forth, and it's become a large issue and we have evidence to base that, I'm fine with that, but I think this is not a reactive. I think proactive in saying we're going to do this because we're going to take these parking areas away because the narrow the street. So my question is, it's extreme, especially in my area, is that with the 6.5 and so forth, could there any be consideration saying let's phase this in and let's have one side parking, one side parking for all these roadways in our wards that are under 7?
Through the mayor, the 6.5 streets still doesn't allow for the traversing of the vehicles. As the chief had mentioned, there are larger vehicles that are now doing the response time. And again, when it comes to public safety, is ensuring that we meet those response times. So not necessarily when we say a public safety issue, we do want to ensure that we meet those response times and facilitate that roadway to do so.
Thank you.
All right. I'm tempted to ask if you want to move a motion to go past the hour, looking at all the interest we're getting here from around the table. Councillor O'Meara.
Thank you, Your Worship. There's been more than a few things raised tonight that I had questions about, but I think we've got a big mouthful here. There's from differences in the north to differences down here to eliminating parking with fire trucks to permits to, this is a lot to all come to consensus on one report here. So maybe in hindsight, breaking this up into little other pieces might have worked a little better, but I'm gonna broach a couple issues that I have here. How many 3-hour parking violation tickets did we issue last year? Or do we know the number?
Through your worship, off the top of our head, I don't have that number, but I certainly can find it for you.
Okay, because I'm still trying to understand why we're going from 3 to 5 in certain areas, and I know we've had issues with PSWs using the public right-of-way as a parking spot for their jobs for 8 hours, and I guess they go and they move and they come back. So how do we monitor that? I know it used to be the old chuck on the tire line at 90 degrees, and you could tell whether that moved, and I'm sure that doesn't happen anymore. But how do we know if a car is move and come back, or what the measurement is to say, have they been there for 3 or 5 hours or not?
Sure. Through your worship, it's a great question. So right now, we used to do the chalk on the tires. You're right, we don't do that anymore. We have moved into the modern world, and we use what we call is a license plate recognition system. So if anybody's seen some of our cars driving down the road, you'll see that there's some cameras on the side. What happens is the LPR will take a photo of the vehicle. It will also GPS locate the vehicle, and it will take a picture of the wheels as well, so we can get the valve stem location. So the officer will drive by, he'll do a number of streets, it will all be located. He'll drive by again after 5 hours later, and anything that hasn't moved, the system will ping. So the officer will get a notification saying that that vehicle hasn't moved, that the information is still the same. The officer will do a comparison, so they'll look at the data, check the location. They'll also check the photographs to make sure the vehicle hasn't moved. So we'll check the background, we'll check the valve stems, and if the vehicle hasn't moved, then we'll issue the ticket for the park over 5 hours in this case.
Okay, so you know whether a vehicle's been there, gone to get lunch, and came back and finished working. That's okay. That's great.
That's correct.
And I know around some of the where I live, some of the BIA areas, as we make paid parking, we've seen push out of parking to further streets to go into work or to do whatever that is. So I guess my question is, we're making that more acceptable now with 5 hours to do that rather than 3 hours, and I'm just wondering why.
So through your worship, and I can say from an enforcement standpoint, maybe Lynn can elaborate on this a little bit, but from an enforcement standpoint, the 3 to 5 hours for us is really a bit of effectiveness. The 3 hours, to be perfectly honest, it's a low priority call for us. We don't do it very often. We simply don't have the resources, so it's really only enforced on a complaint basis. This would not change for the 5 hour. So our response would essentially be the same. It would be on a complaint basis. And it really provides that additional time for people who have the service work, the contractors, visitors even. We find we'll get complaints saying, you know what, my family's coming over for dinner. It's going to be longer than 3 hours, right? So this gives them the additional time to be able to do that without having to worry about moving their car and then coming back. But I don't know if Lynn wants to. I'll let her elaborate on anything.
I mean, yeah, that's okay. I get it. I don't want to. You guys have been at that mic for a while. I get it. I just was trying to see the impetus of why this is, and I know conformity and doing what other jurisdictions, but that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But it's not a scab. I'll pick too long here to get a gross analogy. I just want to go back to what Councillor Chisholm was on about. I mean, either the fire trucks need the room, and we change the roads and we just do it in a progression, or they don't. I think we're gonna have trouble where people are gonna go, well, how come that road still has to park and mine came to, and you said, well, because somebody called and complained. Like it's a much more sensible approach to say, it will come, we're just waiting, but we're doing all the streets. I mean, we're trying to figure out if either they need the space or they don't, and if they do, let's just eventually get to them all, but take our time, and it's on a list, and it's gonna happen. But I don't get, well, if nobody complains, then we're just going to wink, wink, nudge, nudge, not make it safe. I don't think that's fair. So I would like to just to do that. If that's what we say is the safest thing to do, I think we should do that. And then I guess just when it comes to around the community centers at 400-meter radius to, like, I know people who have people over and are going to want to. I know public roads are for everybody, but when you live there, you tend to use that road more than other people. So there is some kind of utility for wanting to use those public road spaces to park. So I think we're going to be in trouble if, again, one person decides, nope, I don't like this, and then the whole street doesn't have a say in that. And I think that's going to be problematic. So how are we going to get around that? Or what are we going to say to residents? We have vexatious rules about bylaw sort of complaints. So what are we going to do about that when that issue arises?
So through the mayor, with respect to the expedited review around destination areas or community zones, so they would just get the expedited review, so there would still be for the 3 to 5 hour increase to look whether there's restrictions or seasonal restrictions. That would still follow the same process that we do have today, but we would expedite our review and put that as a priority because we've already identified it. So that component would still be part of the overall process.
Okay, that makes sense. Sorry, yeah, there's been a lot, so I'm confusing what it is we're doing under what circumstances with what timeframes and what I think. So anyway, I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
Councillor Hazlet-Thiel.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Burton. I'm at a bit of a loss on this, and I've had several conversations with Lynn. In 2023, we had an incredible amount of staff time and effort put into one street that I have multiple emails that show that we asked a question about safety. And the answer we got back after, a variety of discussions was that the chief fire prevention officer visited the area, and as a result, it was determined there was no increased hazard due to street parking. It was determined that the street was functioning as it should, and a fire vehicle could traverse the streets if needed to respond to a call. As councillors, we relied on that. Fast forward to 2026. I can assure you that if we had been told something different, then some solutions would have been advanced for that particular circumstance. But that's not what we were advised. And today we're being told by fire services that, if this street is narrow, then it will become a no parking street. And for some folks, that'll be a relief because their property is big enough to hold their visitors and potentially their contractors. But there will be others where this is going to come as a total surprise. It significantly changes how they operate in their daily life. I understand we need to put safety first. That's why we pushed this issue in 2023. At the same time, I would like to see data that actually shows us that what's changed since 2023. And I'm concerned about not having had the opportunity to go to those neighborhoods and explain to them this new, we need to do this, and we need to bring you along on this journey. We are known as councillors to go out and talk quite actively with our community. Even today, it was only last night, and even after a bit of conversation today, was it clear that there really will be there'll be no survey. This is a call. Your street is now going to be no parking, and your contractor, you better find room for him. Your visitor, you better move him up a street or down a street or find another street. It's a fundamental shift in the neighborhoods. So I want people to be safe, but I want information that really I can hold on to, and I want to bring people along on this journey, not just surprise them that, the community announcement goes out after tonight saying, you can call in and your street's 6.5, even though you have no curbs, and you are now in a no parking situation. I also think that one-way streets are a potential solution that should be investigated. And we wanted to do that in 2023, but we were pulled back from that. So we're caught between a rock and a hard place here, not because we don't want people to be safe, but we haven't brought people along on this. And that's not the Oakville way. We normally bring people along on a journey so they understand what, why, and how we're going to do what we're going to do. So I'm very concerned we're making a significant change without having done that. Particularly when they're used to a process that says, hey, file a petition, go and knock on your doors, and if X number of people agree. I mean, we put them through a lot on traffic calming, but we're going to not do that. If the trucks cannot get in, if this statement that was read and sent to us is now fundamentally changed, then I would agree we're going to need to get there. But to get there tonight without having conversations with people, it's a stark contrast between how we've always done things. It concerns me that some people will walk away with the perception that we're not worried about their safety. We absolutely are. I mean, I pulled up over 100 emails trying to go through a process. So we're concerned, but we also want to make sure we do this in a way that brings people along, because in our neighborhood, it will be a dramatic change. Where will their visitor park? Where will people who are visiting Lakeside park? They're visiting the museum. There's only like 12 parking spaces in the museum parking lot. Where will people who, I could go on and on. It's not that I need parking for anybody that is not a resident, but it's a reality of our situation, and we should have brought people along on this journey before we would make a decision tonight that would fundamentally change how they live.
Councillor, I would urge councillors to consider the possibility that it would be a good idea to refer this back to staff to deal with the 1,001 points that you have raised and that I think you're entitled to have answered. And at no time did I see in any of this a sense of urgency that it must be done tonight and without public consultation.
Well, Mayor Burton, I appreciate that support, and I believe Councillor Giddings has a refer back for consideration for everyone, but I would appreciate support in that regard.
Councillor Giddings, would you please favor us with a motion to refer back?
Let me just find it here. And this would be in addition to Councillor Adams. I think he has one in there. He has already.
So if we're referring it back, Councillor Adams can wait for his change. Although technically, we have a motion, it's being referred, and it can come back with his element because he's already moved it. So I don't see a difficulty there. A plain motion referring back, calling on staff to answer
to allow for consideration of a one-way street for safety and to facilitate a viable solution rather than a full ban on parking, consideration for how residential areas in close proximity to town facilities or popular destinations be dealt with, and a communication consultation strategy, request for public feedback.
So, and all other issues raised by council would be nice that way. They don't accidentally.
I just saw that here. Yes, that's
you
at
just
the
did.
bottom.
Oh, good,
Yes.
good. That's wonderful. Council, we need a seconder for Councillor Giddings. Oh, it's a race. Councillor Chisholm, I think Dave was channeling you to a degree, or you were channeling him. A motion to refer is not debatable. May I put the question? Any objection to the referral?
Mayor Burton, a recorded vote, please.
Stand by, Councillor.
Thank you.
Is there any objection? Councillor, there is no objection, except your hand is up. Maybe you're objecting. Now it's down. No one's objecting. And the clerk will record that it was unanimous and you will have your record. How's that?
I thank you.
Everybody happy? That's the way to end a meeting. Thank you. So now, that brings us to new business, if anybody has any.
Sorry, Your Worship, just a point of order. Are we going to look at 11.2?
Sorry. We passed that earlier.
Oh, okay.
That was with the two consent items that were consent.
Fair enough.
I hope it wasn't, I mean, maybe we went too fast. Anyway, new business. Calling for Councillor McNeice, new business.
Thank you, Worship. This is the congratulatory nature as well, right? Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
I just wanted to thank staff for the Canada Day celebration. We did a lot of work expecting a lot of teenagers, but we didn't realize the real battle was Mother Nature, but staff had it down pat. They knew what to do. I think the easy thing in those situations would be to cancel it, but they withstood about a 90-minute, shelter-in-place type procedure, and all these things we sort of don't realize that staff has to plan for behind the scenes. They were out there in all the elements, soaking wet, all night long. I even saw some staff out at midnight, still dealing with some issues there. So, from the bottom of my heart, and Councillor Mayor, and for Ward 1 and all council, I really want to praise staff for the valiant effort and sort of sacrificing their holiday so that kids and families from across the community could come out in huge numbers to enjoy a patriotic night of celebrating our country and fireworks. So.
All right, Councillor McNeice, is there any other new business from your end of the table, like a notice of motion of some kind? Councillor O'Meara.
Yeah, there is a notice of motion that I put forward, but we can debate that next meeting, but would you like me to read it now or just wait till next meeting?
Well, I just want to note that it's introduced for the record, that's all.
Perfect, thank you. It's just for provincial support for municipal public safety powers, and I'll just read it briefly. Oakville has experienced repeated public safety concerns during Canada Day celebrations, including large unsanctioned youth gatherings, dangerous fireworks use, disorder, and risk to residents, visitors, businesses, and emergency responders. And whereas municipalities need clear tools to respond when large gatherings create an immediate risk to public safety, therefore be it resolved that the Town of Oakville requests the Ontario Solicitor General to work with municipalities to review and amend provincial legislation to provide clear charter-compliant authority for police and municipalities to direct the dispersal of groups when an imminent public safety risk has been determined, and that any new authority include clear limits, including defined locations, limited time periods, objective safety criteria, and accountability measures. And that this resolution be forwarded to the Solicitor General, Municipal Affairs and Housing, local MPPs, AMO, and the Association of Police Services Boards, and Ontario municipalities for support.
Thank you, Councillor. And is there a seconder, Councillor McNeice? Thank you. Thanks for the information. Are there any requests for reports? Councillor Knoll, you have new business? Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Maybe just to help Councillor O'Meara with his request, it's Ontario Association of Police Service Boards doesn't exist anymore. It's now called Police Governance Ontario, so you might just want to correct that just to be helpful. I want to say ditto to Councillor McNeice's point on Canada Day. It was a fabulous day. The town really the town staff really outdid yourself on what you were able to accomplish, especially in light of the on-again, off-again nature of the planning of that event. It was truly spectacular, and I want to thank you for that as well. But I do want to, on that, I just want to mention that the Bronte Legion took a big hit that night, and I know that because they had damage from the actual storm and lost a lot of revenue that evening that they were counting on. So I just want to put a call out to the community to consider supporting the Legion. I know Michelle and I dropped off a few dollars to help out because they really did suffer a big loss that night, including some damage to equipment as a result of the rain. But my most important reason maybe not my most important, but the main reason I'm jumping in to say, take a moment to give my thanks. I want to thank the community of Oakville for another great Rib Fest. We had a fantastic 3-day Rib Fest weekend. The weather was very cooperative. We didn't really hit that heat wave until the day after, thank goodness, or the ribs could have cooked on the pavement. We had a wonderful weekend. We raised a good chunk of money for local charities. I want to say a big thank you to the Oakville Trafalgar Rotary Club and the Oakville Lions Club for once again putting the emphasis on community engagement and putting that great Rib Fest together. And of course, thank you to Sheridan College and all the sponsors for making that possible. And we'll see you again next year.
All right, thank you, everybody. I believe we could now entertain a motion to consider and approve the bylaws listed in the agenda, the 5 of them. And I'll look for a mover and seconder. And Councillor Longo And Councillor Elgar, let's get you on the minutes here. Any objection? There being no objection, the bylaws are considered read and passed. And Mr. Clerk, number 18, what do you want there?
We're good.
We're good. All right, well then, we have completed most of the work of the meeting, and I think actually, in the sense of referring the item back to staff, I'll count that as completing the work of the meeting too, because I think you identified too many gaps and holes and contradictions to pass that forward at this point. So it's been terrific working with you tonight. I look forward to the next opportunity. Oh, it's tomorrow night. And we'll see you then. Good night.